Out. Wow, we already got some people in here. I didn't even realize we had this many people so far. So it's nice to see you, Danielle Unicorn. It's nice to see you, Diane. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. So we're going to be here. We're talking about a lot of things. Things are coming out. There was another hearing. It was quite extensive where we had our military and Colonel Harrison. And he was in the hot seat too. I looked at some of these stuff. I missed like 3 hours of it, but I got some clips of this, that, and the other. And they addressed with him, how can this many failures happen? How does this not look like somebody in our government tried to execute President Donald J. Trump? And that's exactly what it looks like. Every bit of information that we get, guys, I've got to tell you, that second story window where the shooter was, we're going to be going over some of that stuff with Eli Crane. He was out there. There was, and of course, we have Chuck Grassley, which has dropped some of the information related to the sniper unalive there on the roof, body cam footage. Everybody's talking about this body cam footage. A lot of people are talking about President Biden's health, and of course, the Kamala Harris, nominee, which I think is, they're downplaying this like there's no tomorrow. The significance of her just moving right in without the party, the actual people, even putting a vote in. They're just like, oh, no big deal. Well, she was on the ballot anyway. She was the vice president. They selected Biden, but she was the vice president. We're just, they voted for her. It's like, no, they didn't. They voted for President Biden. And they're trying to take the easy way out, not give their people, and they're lying to the people saying that, oh, Kamala Harris has so much support. She was able to get $100 million in her first night. That's a lie. If you guys remember, President Biden lost $90 million when that attempt was on, which is a little funny, when the attempt on President Trump was unsuccessful. Again, pretty funny. But all of a sudden, Kamala Harris has she raised $10 million. Okay, so this illusion that she's that the people like her on the Democrat side. No, she raised $10 million. All they did was give her back the $90 million they took from President Biden. So she raised $10 million. That's pretty sad. That's horrible. But you know what? Your mainstream media is not going to give you the truth. That's why many people like me are out there to make sure that we have the accurate information. Kamala Harris is not liked by her party. Many people in her own party mock her. Many people know that she pretty much slept her way to the top. I mean, these are things that this is back in California when she was in California, and yes, she did. So good morning, everyone. We're starting off with a bang on this, as many of you know. Donald J. Trump, his family is very near and dear to my heart, and this idea that this would be the biggest criminal case that we will cover most likely in our lifetime. For me to step down and away from this because of my political leanings is completely, to me, it's wrong. I feel like our voices are starting to be heard by Congress. Our voices are starting to be heard by the big people in charge about our concern for what happened that day and how so many things went wrong on this day. Things that do not go with any type of policing protocol, even at the lowest level. At the lowest level, the mistakes that were made should never have been made. They don't make sense how they were made. We're listening to how snipers were in that window. A window was open on that second story. Remember, we had echoing. Remember, we said there's potential for a second shooter that nobody wants to acknowledge. I absolutely believe it, and I absolutely believe the second shooter may have been inside that building giving off that echo because they were shooting from a window. We have echoing that we did not have. And also, not only that, but they said all of the bullets were around this guy. They also told us that this guy was in a different position than he was, so we were able to actually see where he was on Chuck Grassley. We're going to get there. Matt Wallace on Twitter says, oh my God, this needs to be shared everywhere immediately. The Heritage Foundation just released cell phone data of the mysterious figure who made frequent trips between Trump shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks' home and a building in D.C. near the FBI office. Now, I watched another guy this morning. Listen to this. Guess what else is a few blocks away from the FBI building? I'm going to let you guys sit down for a second because it's pretty shocking, but not shocking. The Secret Service building as well, just a few blocks away. So now we have the FBI and the Secret Service buildings within the close proximity of where Thomas Matthew Crooks was in D.C. 9 devices were identified in the analysis linking to both his home and his work. He did not act alone. We are witnessing the first ever coup in the history of the United States of America. And of course, it's not coming from the right. This is a very serious matter. I think people are still in the, we need to, club each other over the head. No, we are absolutely in times that we have not seen. This is from inside our government. We knew it. We could smell it. I'm telling you, somebody like me that has been at Trump rallies over and over and over again, going through all of their policies and procedures, going in through the magtrometers, going through all of the requirements to be there, making sure that we're in line first, making sure we don't have things. I make it very easy. I bring my equipment in, which are battery packs and phones. So the whole front row Joes have, they bring their own little phones, their own chargers in, but I find that their chargers die before the end of the day. So I have larger chargers, one that literally holds a charge for 30 hours. It can charge up to 30 hours. So it's a pretty big charger. Actually, it's holding this phone up. It's what I use for the weight to keep this thing. This right here is a 30-hour battery right there. Okay. And it has every single type of connector for anybody. And so this is what I take to, and one of the requirements to get through with one like this is that it has a power on and off button, which this does. So I'm able to get this big charger, this big battery pack through security because of I made sure I worked with them to be compliant. So I know how specific and how difficult it is to go through those lines, get through, and try to get to the front of the row. It's quite difficult, okay? But we do it and we work for it. But the security there is so strict and so obvious that it makes it difficult for us to believe that this guy can bring out a rangefinder, can have a freaking drone. How was all of this? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You know what makes sense? It makes sense that people were told to stand down and not to worry about it. Now, we don't have that information, but somebody knew something. We've got the stock market. The stock market, people put puts on Donald Trump. So obviously more people knew. This idea that it's a lone wolf, it doesn't jive with everything that we're seeing. It doesn't jive with the CrowdStrike takedown. It doesn't bode with the fact that this man was in these places where he could have contact with federal agents. Why was he in Washington, D.C.? Why was he near the FBI building and the Secret Service building? Who was he communicating with? Somebody activated this boy. Somebody told him to be there, and it's on the heels of Biden's entire team, everybody that has supported him coming against him and telling him to step down as they did their coup inside the Democratic Party to thwart President Biden's nomination bid. All of this happened within an hour or so before this man showed up to take his final act. These are all things that we can't dispute. Biden could not win without Donald Trump out of the way. Donald Trump didn't get out of the way, and now Biden's out of the way and Harris is put in. These things don't make sense to the normal public of the United States of America, because even on both sides of the aisle, why do you think Congress came together and was whipping up on Kim Cheatle? Why? Because everybody knows that something happened and this is an inside job, and they're wanting to get to the bottom of it, and they're wanting to hold people accountable. I think this is going to be, I think all of the hits have been coordinated. And they're just using the same playbook. The problem is we have social media this day and age, and everybody had their videos, not just mainstream media's videos. Everybody had their videos up on social media. We could literally see from every single angle of that Trump rally what was taking place long before the masses of law enforcement even put their feet down on the grounds there in Butler, Pennsylvania. We had already had people analyzing the sounds of the gunshots before they even had their bosses on the grounds there, which is a little surprising because the bosses' asses should have been on the ground. This is the biggest person, the biggest client that they have is Donald J. Trump outside of Joe Biden. And they couldn't keep him safe. Just, we just had, it was just complete incompetence, like our people, we switched out the people. It was just a mere misunderstanding. We switched out all of the trained Secret Service people with desk jockeys that didn't know what they were doing and can't even holster their gun, And we did have somebody up on that roof, but the temperature was just a little too hot, and this day and age, we got to take care of our agents. We got to make sure that they stay cool instead of rotating the people on and off the building. But no, we just moved him, downstairs and got him some water and let him sit in the air conditioning, do his duty that way. We wouldn't want officers that are there to protect your life actually being on the ground near you so they can protect your life. They need to be cooled off. They need to make sure that they have, shade and stuff like that, because it's just inhumane to think that our law enforcement officers should have to risk their life for somebody else, the normal stuff, right? The normal stuff. We just, Our agents are a little more important. They're not supposed to put their life in danger when they put that badge and gun on. You know how it goes, right? And then we find out that there was somebody stationed in the second story that overlooked right where Thomas Crooks was. Wow. And your sniper was so blind he couldn't see the man crawling up the roof. Huh. Wow. What kind of shit show are they wanting us to believe? Because that's what it is. A shit show. And they just want us to believe that this is just mere incompetence. And I understand that, I love Jennifer Coffindaffer, and I don't ever want to poke any type of nasty prong her way, but in all fairness, she's an FBI agent and probably could never believe her FBI could ever be so dirty and disgusting. She probably doesn't even want to believe that the Steele dossier was something that her bosses manufactured to try to take out Donald Trump. And it's so funny that we know that the Democrat Party is so disgustingly hierarchy, folks. I want to make sure we know that we're not talking about the mom and pops here, okay? Real true blood Americans that just want better lives. We're not beating up the Democrats, okay? We're beating up the Democrat Party, okay? Big difference. I know people are going to have to kind of separate themselves, but there is definitely a difference between our mom and pops that go out there and put their name and put their vote on a ballot as it does the hierarchy of the DNC. The DNC is a dirty, rotten scoundrel. They are the deep state. They will stop at nothing to get their way. They will kill for it. They will steal for it. They don't care. They just stole from their own people a vote for Kamala Harris. Why? Because Kamala Harris is the swamp, right? She will do anything that her bosses tell her to do. Right? Because when you're a president, we're no longer your bosses. The deep state's your boss. And trust me, if you don't fall in line, they will come after you. Things will be manufactured. You'll be ripped to shreds because they have all of mainstream media, ABC, CNN, MSNBC. They've lied to you for years about Joe Biden and Joe Biden's condition. Years. They thwarted their party once by stealing the vote for an incompetent man and lying to their own people to get him in place because we knew he wasn't running the country, because the deep state's running the country. And as you see, when he could not win against Donald Trump, what they are willing to do, they are willing to execute our next president of the United States to stay in power. And people can call this misinformation all day long, but if you follow the evidence and look clearly at the evidence, there is no possibility the best law enforcement in our country and in our world could be this incompetent. Nobody believes their horseshit. Nobody. I'm not going to stand for it on my channel. I'm not going to listen to the alphabet soup of this country. I want Donald Trump to name the investigator that's going to be hired to do an independent investigation of his attempted assassination, because he's the only one I trust at this point. Kamala Harris is a snake. She stole from her own people. That is not commendable. And she's trying to say that she's got a pristine record while Donald Trump's a felon. I wonder why he's a freaking felon, Kamala Harris. Deep state much? Or deep throat much? Just asking for a few million friends out here on social media. I am angry by this. You guys know how I feel about it, and I'm trying to keep my frustration, my anger, and a multitude of other feelings at bay while covering this case. But it's hard because this is, in all fairness, my president. These were my people, and they were injured. And quite frankly, I can't for the life of me figure out why any of this was done. But let's listen to this. This is very interesting, and I think everybody needs to hear this. If it'll play. Why is it not playing? Here we go.
I'm just gonna say it.
Okay, here it is.
I'm just gonna say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
I have not, sir.
You haven't? Well, there's
Wow.
a lot of people in this room that have been getting the same messages.
I doubt that highly.
What do you think that is? Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong? Right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance, was
Can you guys see
spotted
that?
with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter-sniper operations. I was a sniper in the SEAL team's colonel. As soon as I got out of the SUV and I saw that that water tower, I was like, that's exactly where I'd be. Put me right there. So obvious. After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions as a modern-day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that a lot of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
I wouldn't begin to speculate about what the American people think, sir.
Well, here, Colonel Paris, let me speculate for you. Yes, we believe that this was an assassination attempt by our deep state here in the United States. This man, you guys need to hear this. You guys are about to be shocked. Because not only did he have advanced explosives while not being military trained, and even though crawling across the top of a roof, again, looked like military training maneuvers to me. Just saying. But then he has a sanitized house to boot? Let's keep listening.
Make entry and conduct investigation at the suspect's home prior to this shooting?
Excuse me, sir. I've asked that question.
Did your team make entry and conduct any investigation at the suspect's home?
I believe we had people that participated in that securing of it. There were bomb assets that we provided.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, I'm letting everybody come.
Okay.
On the night of, since then, none.
Did you get any reports from any of your agents of anything fishy at the home?
I was briefed on
Was there any silverware found in the home or trash?
I have nothing in the briefing that I was given.
Was it extremely clean, almost like a medical lab? Were you given any of those reports?
I wasn't given any of those details.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Interesting.
Like a medical lab. Like a medical lab. Where's his parents that he lives with? Who are they? What are their connections? Or their aliases? Because that's where I'm going with this. That's exactly where I'm going with this. This is not conspiracy theories. This is theories. Far from being conspiracy. Far from being conspiracy. Now, I want you to listen to, that was Eli Crane. We're going to go to Eli Crane's, his actual Twitter account. His Twitter account is Representative Eli, E-L-I, Crane, C-R-A-N-E, like the crane, right? We should know how to spell it because we're on the heels of Christopher Proudfoot and his 515 crane operations that didn't happen, right? Seems like awfully funny that all these things people say happen never happen, and the stuff that we say happen, they're saying, oh no, it never happened. You guys are just imagining it. You're imagining this conspiracy within our party. Just look the other way. Just look the other way. This is out the window. This is where one of our counter snipers was.
On the building where the supposed sniper took a shot. It's not that steep at all. We just had a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me? Had Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof. He would have been taken out. Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where the stage was set up. That's where the president was giving his speech from. A lot of questions here in Butler, but we look forward to doing.
It sure does sound like the Oversight Committee is taking their job very, very seriously, even though the Secret Service director refused to even go out there and see this. Now, my question is here's the window that they allegedly had a sniper in. This is where the boy was at. Can anybody tell me why somebody had to walk up a ladder when it looks like they could have just climbed out a window and got to him? And you know, those weird little finicky questions we have about you got a window right there. Why did you walk away from that, walk down the stairs, go around, climb up a ladder, and get on a roof? Man, it's one of two things. Complete incompetence, which, let's face it, we've got some of the best in these outfits, right? Do we really believe that it's this much incompetence? It's a hard pill to swallow that there's this much incompetence in some of our most elite and dangerous outfits, such as the Secret Service and the FBI. It seems awfully weird that somebody would intentionally cut that whole entire building out from the security perimeter, don't you think? I mean, that just seems odd in of itself, just the planning aspect. Who planned that? What person approved that plan that removed that whole entire building that had a straight line shot to the stage? What person that was doing, countermeasures at, before they set up the stage and stuff? And why did they set up the stage right there? Because it seems like if they had it positioned on the other end of the field, none of this would be a situation. Who made it right there in the line? You see how I'm saying? Like, Donald Trump's not making these decisions. Somebody else is making these decisions. And it seems very peculiar that all these decisions just happen to warrant some lone wolf on this day that they had this major security failure. Out of all the rallies, the hundreds and hundreds of rallies that Trump put on that were very successful and very secure, Why did all the fail safes just not work? Not work. That reminds me, Miss Lee Mama 3. Miss Lee Mama 3 has a new channel on Etsy. Not a channel, but a shop on Etsy. And definitely want to promote. We have a lot of great people in this chat that do a lot of great things. And she's got a channel that sells some items. So we wanted to definitely promote that on there. If you guys would like to check out her store, please. Sonia is just posting her store down below. She's part of the Bullhorn Betty family. So if there's something you like, please consider it. You know, this is what it's all about, right? Us taking care of one another. So if it's something that you like, consider purchasing it from her as opposed to somebody else. I accidentally sent before finishing a theory. That's okay, Skipper. Betty, are you following Black Swan trial in Manatee County? No, I'm not. I'm not. Didn't even know it was here, but I've been on 2 totally separate cases. I don't even think we even covered Black Swan on this channel at all, to be honest with you. But it is, if it's close to home, I definitely would definitely like it. Anything for you, Miss Lee. I'm just happy the husband gave you back to me. I'm just kidding. We love Mr. Lee. We love Mr. Lee. Okay, need to look into all the money that was invested the day before and all the money that was pulled out claiming type error. How many billions would have been made if it would have hit him? Exactly. And not only that, but why is the Security and Exchange Commission not in the hot seat right now, or not being brought in for congressional questioning on identifying who these people were that put these puts on there, and how did they know to put those puts on Rumble as well as Donald Trump Inc.? A lot of people don't look at outside other stuff. You know, when I'm looking at these worldly cases, I'm looking at the entire world. I'm not looking at just Washington, D.C., and I'm not looking at I'm looking at the full landscape. What are we looking at here? What I'm looking at here, let me just break it all down for you, what me personally is looking for. So we have a major disrupt in the Democrat Party where Biden is refusing to step down. 50, and I mean at least 50 of his Congress was just about to come forward an hour before, or right about the time that this shooter tried to take Donald Trump's life. And they were going to come out and tell the American people that this man, and they have seen this man throughout his tenure showing dementia-type disabilities, okay, and issues. That was what was about to be disclosed to the American public before Donald Trump almost got assassinated. Let's remember, Jill Biden, which is BFFs with Kim Cheatle, the Secret Service director. Jill Biden seems like one of these women that just wants to be number one and has always been sitting second seat and second fiddle her entire life. And it's no different with her presidency. Her husband and her, it's disgusting. They're going to be the worst president and first lady in the history of our country. They're going to be, in 100 years, our students are going to be taught about what not to do. And Biden and Jill and Joe are going to be the poster child of what not to do in our government. The whole Democrat Party people have got to wake up. They are ruining this country with their crap. Their policies are literally helping people that aren't even Americans in this country survive while the American people are suffering. And all they have to do is be really nice and put it in a nice little package for their people to listen to their word salad while they're robbing them blind, along with their frickin' jobs, because they're looking for the 10 million additional votes they're about to get in the next 10 years. They don't give a rat's ass about you. They don't care. They really don't. They just stole from them. They stole their own people's votes. If that doesn't show you what kind of communists the elite of the Democrat Party are, I don't know what to tell you. They are leading their people astray and blindly walking them into like the lion's den. They just stole from them. They used to just steal from the Republicans. Now they can't even do that. They got to start stealing from their own damn people. Chuck Grassley, you got to hear this. Another interesting tidbit. And then we're going to go over to Josh Hawley's page, because I think you guys need to see what whistleblowers are going on. And it does sound like Biden did have a mini stroke while he was in Vegas. It sounds like he's recovered from his mini stroke, but that's what we're dealing with Biden. So here we go. Now, I'm going to say that this is going to be about a 3-minute video, and it is, it's going to be, if you're a little disturbed by a little bit of blood or whatever, then you may not want to be here. There's nothing really grotesque to see, but there is blood. Okay, so I just wanted to forewarn people that might have a weak stomach. Okay, so here we go. We're going to watch the whole thing. It's the body cam.
Yes, so they sent the, yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him. Okay. Right there, officer. Got it. So,
This thing where you hold the phone. Can you guys see that?
We don't know. I don't know. Treating that as suspicious device. Correct. 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? So if you go to that window that's open, yell for Greg. That's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the bike back down and then lost.
So they're actually talking about somebody being in that window, seeing him and taking a picture. A sniper in that window taking a picture of him and sending it off. Like he didn't know what to do. You execute the threat. They're like, oh, well, he was just a suspicious person. At what point does he become not suspicious and a threat? I mean, was it the gun? Is it climbing up a rooftop with a gun? Is it crawling on the roof? At what point are you going to assess this man as a threat to not only the people on the ground, but also President Donald J. Trump? It doesn't make sense, does it? Seems like a lot of word salad, and it seems like a lot of people knew that this man was there with a gun and didn't do anything until after he fired a whole round of shots. They didn't even take him out after the first shot nicked President Trump. They waited until he unearthed at least 8 bullets, and I digress. I think it was only 3 bullets, and I think somebody in that window shot an additional amount of bullets. I'm at the mercy of the reports, which I don't trust, but we heard different sounds. A gun should not change its sounds, especially if the person is still in the same position. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So let's keep going. We started over, sorry.
Yes, so they sent the, yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him. Okay.
Sorry, I'm moving it around too much. I'm trying to stabilize it.
On that bike? We don't know. We don't know. So I don't know. Treating that as suspicious device. Correct. 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? So if you go to that window that's open, yell for Greg. That's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the bike back down and then lost sight of him. Okay. He's the one that sent the pictures. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on and he's
So we had the picture of that.
I got that.
Okay. And then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe. Okay. But he would be right inside that window. He's the one that physically seen this, sent the pictures, and called it out.
Okay, so and we have somebody detained, correct?
There's somebody detained. Somebody else detained.
Our guy was just up here and told me that there's a guy detained. He's the owner of the bike. I said, no, that's the owner.
We've been up here, so we wouldn't know that information.
We just hold ass and we got over it. We hopped up on it.
Is that all your stuff? Yeah, so someone came up looking to treat him.
Copy. Gas is off the building, just so you know.
Yeah, they do. I talked to the guy. They were detained for film.
the American Water was notified, they authorized.
Maybe they were involved, maybe they
They will
weren't.
start somebody.
But I think, you know, the guys that saw them filming, oh, they were filming us, and then filming the guy on the roof, and then filming us, and then when shots started firing, they tried to run away. Isn't that what everybody would do today? You know, I'm not saying they weren't, but you know what I mean? Like that.
Something here right now, right?
Right. So I got no problem detaining.
Thank you, and here too, we got a squad looking
Let's
for.
have those guys find out what they know, who they are, whatever. I'm trying to get clear information.
Bridges holes in the water tower.
One shooter, deceased. I think we have 3 victims in the crowd. Is that, you guys hear that?
That I'm not sure.
So I heard 1 deceased, 2 lifeless.
I know two helicopters. I don't know how many.
Well,
Victims.
we have access to the crowd. Water tower.
Any, LE?
I will try to confirm.
In the van? He survived? Copy.
This is the tassel, the corn plant. This tech.
So Chuck Grassley, that's Chuck Grassley right there. He got a hold of that body cam footage and released it to the public. Chuck Grassley, I like Chuck Grassley. You know, I don't agree with him 100% of the time, as with anybody. But we've got some questions here. We got some serious logistic questions that have got to be answered. And every single person being trumped across these committees, in all fairness, are lying to the people. They don't know anything. They're like, oh, well, I didn't hear this. Oh, I didn't hear that. How could you not hear it when half of America has heard it? How can you not believe? How can you be national security and you not know that Bullhorn Betty is here along with millions of other people stating we don't believe this horse nonsense, this horse manure. We don't believe it. There's no possibility that this many mistakes happen just perfectly on this specific day. And who the hell allowed somebody to abandon their post without replacing them with somebody? It sounded like there was a lot of law enforcement people in the building under the roof where Thomas Crooks was at and perched. Why weren't they cycling them out if they were so hot and couldn't handle the heat, even though we can sit out there all night long in the heat, all day long in the heat, and throughout the day and night in the heat? But our law enforcement parts cannot do it. It's too hot. It's too hot. I don't have somebody to cycle out with me to hold my position while I go into a cool building to cool off. But our law enforcement needs to. So the American people that go and see Trump rallies are more conditioned to handle law enforcement than law enforcement is? Cut it out. Who believes that horse manure? I surely do not. And then we find out somebody was in that window? What? And why, if it was so hot outside, why would that window be open? It just doesn't make sense to me. Somebody make all of this make sense to me. And how does our Secret Service director, they're today, I don't know what time, but they're going to have Chris Wray in the hot seat, but I don't think they're going to be making that public. They might, it should be going on. But I don't know. I have not seen any lives related to Chris Wray, but they may be talking about, oh, here it is. FBI director gets destroyed live. Let's see it. Listen to this.
Assassination threats.
We're about 25 minutes behind schedule.
Political violence. Plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer and overthrow parts of the state government.
No way.
That is political violence.
That was an FBI setup.
Deadly attack 3 years ago against this very building.
I can't even watch this.
Breaking through police barriers, run through these.
This is hard to watch. Let's just see who else has it. Oversight Committee of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Or in closets. That is political violence. This assassination attempt, as horrific as it is, should surprise no one. And you would think a political party that almost lost their presidential candidate through an act of political violence would have something to say about the way their leaders keep talking about the next election. Donald Trump has warned there will be a, quote, bloodbath if he loses. Republican Ohio State Senator George Lang said just last week at a rally for JD
This is another person that needs to be fired from his job. He is part of the deep state.
Lose the November election.
He's part of the deep state.
President of the right-wing think tank and Project 2025 leader, the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, said on Stephen Bannon's podcast, quote, "We're in the process of the second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be," close quote.
Yep.
Republican
I agree.
former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin said in August of last year of Trump's indictments, "Do you want us to be in civil war? Because that's what's going to happen.
It is.
We're not going to keep putting up with this. We do need to rise up and take our country back." Close quote.
What Mr. Nadler is not telling you is that these were from years ago.
The other side of the aisle,
What about what just happened?
you support a bloodbath
About
if you don't get the election outcome you
Soros saying just a few months ago, Trump needs to be assassinated. Or the fact that Biden said, put him in the bullseye.
want. Their allies threaten
But hey,
violence to their political
let's
enemies.
listen to all the people that said stuff that didn't resort into a bloodbath.
Designed solely to influence the 2024 election.
This is the
in
deep
favor of
state
Donald Trump.
trying to do
We
damage
have
control.
spent millions of dollars, thousands of hours of staff time, and more than 100 transcribed interviews, chasing false accusations against President Biden, supporting an impeachment effort that seemed designed to fail, and hunting for a smoking gun that simply
He's
does not
dementia.
exist.
He's a dementia
Instead
patient.
of admitting that these investigations found no corruption, coercion, or unethical behavior by the
Right.
Biden
That's why
administration,
Hunter's in the hot seat.
Republicans
Okay.
chose to just dig deeper and spend more money. Imagine what could have happened if we had spent these thousands of hours of staff time and those millions of taxpayer dollars addressing even one aspect of the political violence.
He needs to be removed
that
from
now threatens
office.
our country. Perhaps had this Republican majority lifted a finger to help a nation that is awash in guns, the assassinate Butler would not have had such easy access to the weapon he used to fire on that crowd. Director Wray, your agency is responsible for addressing some of the most serious issues of our time. The Bureau Fights Gun Violence, which claims the lives of 40,000 Americans. every
How many of
year,
those are Democrats?
protects election security from growing threats.
The people with the guns. How many of those are Democrats? That's my question. No offense, Democrats,
It
but we
protects
have
against
these
domestic
hot
terrorists
spots in our
and violent
country.
extremists who have been a growing threat in recent years and have carried out horrific mass shootings and deadly events around the country. And so much more. I apologize to you, Director, that instead of supporting you in these missions in the 118th Congress, some of my colleagues have instead hindered your work, maligned your agents, and called to abolish and defund your agents.
But you're not explaining how this man had access to FBI agents.
Despicable, especially from the party that claims to, quote, back the blue. And I know that you and your many agents and employees have paid the price for these baseless attacks. I know you have faced a barrage of threats, distrust, and vitriol from the public as a result of these wild, politically driven conspiracies. I know it has become even more dangerous and difficult for you to come to work each day. I may not agree with you on everything, but I sincerely thank you and every employee in your agency who continues to protect our country. The FBI is vital to keeping America safe, and I pray that today we can focus on the real, substantive work of the agency. It is the least we owe our country in these times. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Christopher Wray has been the director of the FBI since 2017. He previously served as the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, and Associate Deputy Attorney General, and as Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. Again, Director Wray, you've been here many times. We appreciate you being here today. And, look forward to your testimony and answering our questions. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and beliefs, so help you God? Let the record affirm. Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. Please be seated. We have votes coming in about 10 minutes, but we definitely want to get through your opening statement as far as we can. And this is going to be an interesting day on Capitol Hill with the Prime Minister of Israel here as well. So, Director Wray, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, members of the committee. I want to begin by offering my condolences on the passing of Representative Jackson Lee, who served the people of Texas in this body and on this committee for so long. Thank you all for your support of our efforts to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution.
Yeah.
I am proud to be here today representing the 38,000 special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff who make up the FBI, men and women who every day work relentlessly to counter the most complex threat environment I've seen in my tenure as FBI director, maybe in my entire career in law enforcement. Before I go any further, I also want to acknowledge and offer my deepest condolences to the victims of the horrific assassination attempt in Butler County, to the friends and family of Corey Comparator, who by all accounts lost his life protecting others from danger, to the other victims, 2 of whom were critically wounded, and of course, to President Trump, former President Trump and his family. As I've said from the beginning, the attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy and our democratic process, and we will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a despicable account of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened. We are bringing all the resources of the FBI to bear, both criminal and national security. Now, there's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened and why will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. The shooter may be deceased, but the FBI's investigation is very much ongoing. To that point, I also want to acknowledge that I recognize both the congressional and the public interest in this case and the importance of this investigation to the American people. And I understand there are a lot of open questions. So while the investigation is very much ongoing and our assessments of the shooter and his actions continue to evolve, my hope here today is to do my best to provide you with all the information I can, given where we are at this point. I have been saying for some time now that we are living in an elevated threat environment. And tragically, the Butler County assassination attempt is another example, a particularly heinous and very public one, of what I've been talking about. But it also reinforces our need at the FBI and our ongoing commitment to stay focused on the threats, on the mission,
But you failed.
and on the people we do the work with and the people we do the work for.
You
Every
guys have the
day,
most prolific
all across this country and
database
around
of
the
American
world, the men and
people
women of the
and
FBI
couldn't keep
are
us safe.
doing just that, working around the clock to counter the threats we face. Just in the last year, for example, in California, the FBI and our partners targeted an organized crime syndicate responsible for trafficking fentanyl, meth, and cocaine all across North America. We charged the Mexican-based suppliers who brought the drugs into the United States, a network of Canada-based truck drivers who delivered the drugs, and the distributors in the United States who spread the poison into our communities. Staying on threats emanating from the border, I have warned for some time now about the threat that foreign terrorists may seek to exploit our southwest border or some other port of entry to advance a plot against Americans. Just last month, for instance, the Bureau and our Joint Terrorism Task Forces worked with ICE in multiple cities
Morning,
across
Seth.
the country as several individuals with suspected international terrorist ties were arrested using ICE's immigration authorities. Leading up to those arrests, hundreds of FBI employees dedicated countless hours to understand the threat
and identify additional individuals of concern. Now, the physical security of the border is, of course, not in the FBI's lane, but as the threat has escalated, we're working with our partners in law enforcement and the intelligence community to find and stop foreign terrorists who would harm Americans and our interests. As concerning as the known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border are, perhaps even more concerning are those we do not yet know about because they provided fake documents or because we didn't have information connecting them to terrorism at the time they arrived in the United
So
States.
Joe Biden's going against his own
Staying
FBI
ahead
guy
of today's threats
and keeping a
demands
border
that
open.
we work together. And for the FBI, that means doubling down on our partnerships, especially with state and local law enforcement. Whether it's working through our hundreds of joint terrorism task forces, to build out source networks, to identify those who slip through the cracks, or targeting the worst of the worst responsible for the violence that still plagues far too many communities through our Safe Streets task forces, or taking the fight to the cartels responsible for trafficking the dangerous drugs like fentanyl, pouring into our country and claiming countless American lives. Staying ahead of the threat also means continuing to disrupt the cyber criminals ravaging businesses large and small, and confronting nation states like China targeting our innovation.
How does this have anything to do with the assassination
At the Bureau,
attempt
we're proud to work
against
side by
Donald
side
J.
with our
Trump?
brothers and sisters in federal, state, and local law enforcement, our partners in the intelligence community, and others around the world to fulfill our commitment to keep Americans safe.
Well, you're not keeping Donald Trump
On
safe,
Friday,
sir.
The FBI will celebrate its 116th anniversary.
Boo!
116 years of protecting the American people
Sorry.
and upholding the Constitution. 116 years of working with our partners to safeguard the communities we serve. 116 years of innovating to stay ahead of the complex, evolving, and very real threats out there. I am proud of the legacy the men and women of the FBI have built and all they have accomplished for the American people.
Steele
If
dossier,
I may,
assassination
as we approach
attempt.
this week's anniversary, I would just like to say to all those who are part of the FBI family, from our current employees to our formers and to our partners across law enforcement and the intelligence community, thank you.
But what
Thank
did you do for
dedicating
President
your
Trump? Your
lives
main
to
job,
this country
protection.
and to his people. It is both humbling and an honor to serve alongside you, and I
Good
look forward
gracious.
to the work we're going to continue to do together.
This
And
is
with
making
that,
me physically
thank you
nauseous.
again for having me, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Director Wray. Excuse me. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm way down here. I appreciate the chairman giving me this because I've got to leave. But let me ask this question. Why doesn't the FBI disclose to the American people all of the investigative detail and evidence that you are gathering as it is gathered?
Well, we have tried to be transparent
No,
with
you haven't.
both Congress and the American people
No,
as
you
we're
haven't.
going along in the investigation. Frankly, unusually so for an ongoing investigation, given the sheer nature of it. We have provided a lot of information. I expect to continue to provide information. I expect to be able to provide some additional information here today in response to your questions and your colleagues. But part of the issue is that, as like in any investigation, as we proceed, facts evolve. Our understanding of what somebody said turns out to have more context that we didn't have before. We have additional leads out there. So part of our goal is not just to respect the ongoing investigation process, but also to make sure that we don't prematurely provide information that then 2 days later turns out to be different than what we told people, because that's very much, kind of a natural part of any investigation.
So, did Crooks fire 8 shots?
We have recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Why was Crooks allowed to get off 8 shots?
Well, that I think is something we're still digging into.
Bullshit.
Again, maybe this is a good place
Bullshit.
to make
Excuse
clear
my language, y'all.
the different investigations that are going on. So, because certainly I understand
Well,
the,
given that I've only got 3 minutes left, and I know other members, I'm really interested because I appreciate your invitation. You said you're prepared to disclose things as questions are asked. So I don't want to waste time. I just want to get to the questions that might, and as many members as can, ask questions that you'll answer. I actually think I'd be glad for you to go on soliloquy, frankly, and tell us what you know. I think the American people want to know. Why was President Trump not kept off the stage?
we don't know the answer to that, but I want to be clear. This is important because I think it goes to questions that I can and cannot answer.
12
Our
days.
investigation, the FBI's mandate, is focused on the shooter and all things related to his attack. Now, obviously, I understand very much the intense interest and focus on the Secret Service's performance, actions, decision-making, etc. There are two separate after-action reviews that the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel has been convened that are focused on that. Now, our
Everybody
investigation
understands it.
will
Everybody
obviously
understands that,
overlap
Director
with
Wray.
that.
Here's the
Yeah.
problem. We're out 13 days, and you say we've been disclosing. You know, we had the the colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police in front of Homeland yesterday. He was quite candid. He disclosed to us that Butler Emergency Services Unit personnel were posted into the windows on the second floor of the AGR building, that they left there to go pursue the person that they spotted, Crooks, that they texted a photo of Crooks to the PSP representative in the command center. That information was relayed to the United States Secret Service. They asked that it be texted to someone else. That was many minutes before President Trump took the stand. What we don't know is why were they not keeping him off the stand? And to the extent, you know, I know we always hear when there's a criminal investigation, you got to wait for that to develop. But do you have any reason to, do you have any other target of your criminal investigation other than Crooks, who's dead?
We are investigating the shooter both to determine his motive and his preparations and activities before the shooting, but also to make sure whether or not there are any co-conspirators, accomplices.
At this point, have you developed any evidence to so suggest that there are any accomplices or cooperators or assisters?
Not at this time, but again, the investigation's ongoing.
So here's the thing. While we wait, maybe for months, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to take a pot shot, but the country went for years with the understanding that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation as offered by respected former intel officials.
Amen.
And the whole time the FBI had the laptop. And then let that happen in public until finally offering testimony in a case.
Yep.
To the degree we wait to hear as a country and as a Congress what has happened in this event, because the FBI is conducting an investigation, it provides quarter for the U.S. Secret Service not perhaps to reckon with the problems that are obvious to everyone. So let's get a couple in while I've got 13 more seconds. One more question perhaps. Senator Grassley says that the records of the day show that there was a counter unmanned aerial surveillance operator on site. Was there? And why did that person not prevent Crooks from being able to use a drone?
So again, questions about the Secret Service's performance
Here we go.
are better directed to those other reviews. What I can tell you when it comes to drones is that Crooks himself had a drone, and I'm prepared to answer questions here today about the shooter and his use of the drone.
But not our people.
Gentleman yields back to ranking members recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, political violence is a scourge and entirely unacceptable, no matter the source or the target.
Can't
Last
stand this
October,
music.
far-right conspiracy theorists...
All right, guys, I'll be right back. I'm going to try to keep this
Pelosi's home and bludgeoned
perched
her husband.
while I use the restroom. I got to go to the little girl's room.
Mocked the attack and promoted conspiracy theories about it.
Yeah,
Last
not the
August, an armed Utah man who threatened to kill President Biden...
excuses. Damage control. You guys hear Nadler. This is called damage control. I don't like this man. I think he's a
Some on the
piece
right
of
claimed that the man was simply a, quote,
dung.
Second Amendment enthusiast. In recent weeks and months, those on the right have repeatedly called for, quote, civil war.
Oops.
Ohio
Sorry.
Senators saying that if Republicans
Sorry, guys.
lose the election, quote, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. The president of the Heritage Foundation likewise
Sorry,
said that,
guys.
quote, we're in the process
Having
of
a
the
problem.
Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be, close quote. Director Wray, it's obviously important that we respect First Amendment protections. But there is clearly a point at which some violent rhetoric crosses over into threats of violence or leads to actual violence. Could you describe how the FBI looks at this relationship between rhetoric and action and what you are seeing around the country?
So I appreciate the question, and this is an issue that I've been talking about for some time. In our view, there is a right way and a wrong way under the First Amendment to express your views, no matter how passionate or even angry you are. And violence and threats of violence is not the right way. And we don't care what you're upset about or who you're upset with. When, from the FBI's perspective, when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that's when we have to draw the line. That's when we get engaged. And there is an alarming phenomenon that we've seen over the last several years of that kind of passion and heated rhetoric turning into actual violence and threats of violence. We've seen it against public officials of all sorts. We've seen it against law enforcement. The number of officers shot and killed in the line of duty in this country is frankly outrageous and alarming. And I know that because every time an officer is shot and killed anywhere in this country, since the day I started as FBI director, I personally call the chief or the sheriff to express my condolences and to talk to them about the victim's family. And the number of those shootings that are ambush related, meaning somebody is targeting law enforcement because they're law enforcement, is particularly alarming.
How about the President of the United States, Mr. Wray?
Of those phone calls. It's almost every 5 days that a law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty.
We're not
And
talking about law enforcement officers. We're talking about President Donald J. Trump.
Passions and heated rhetoric can bubble over into violence.
Thank you. Members of Congress, their families, and their staffs have witnessed an alarming rise in threats against them. I appreciate the work your agency has done to investigate and address these threats, but I'm concerned that we do not seem to be stemming the tide. What is the FBI doing to ensure that members of Congress, their families, and their staffs are safe?
Yeah. Think about yourself,
we have
Mr.
a very
Nadler.
close relationship with the Capitol Police, and we have members of the Capitol Police, for example, who are on some of our task forces. We share intelligence information about things that we're seeing, trends that we're seeing with Capitol Police and others in law enforcement. Obviously, if we have specific information about an effort to target a member of Congress.
Thank you, Callie girl.
Police in a much more specific
God bless
way.
you. Thank you.
But those are some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you. Now, Director, your office is leading the investigation into the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Republicans in Congress, including members of this committee, have repeatedly called for defunding the FBI. What impact would defunding or even just limiting your funding have on the FBI's ability to conduct this and other investigations?
So, I understand that there are heated views, opinions about us, just like there are about every institution in today's America. But cutting our
You guys
funding is
fail.
incredibly short-sighted, and the people it really hurts are state and local law enforcement and the American people.
Well, then
who
quit
are also-
sullying their name, Mr. Wray.
During my remaining time, I want to turn to a different matter. In recent days, Republican members of Congress have attacked presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris as a, quote, DEI candidate, which presumably is code for women and person of color. It's not a new theme for them. In May, Chairman Jordan wrote to you claiming that because of DEI initiatives, the FBI is no longer hiring, quote, the best and brightest candidates.
He's part of the deep
to
state,
fill
y'all.
the position of special agent. With my remaining time, Director Ray, can you please answer the following questions? Is it true that hiring women and people of color means that FBI is no longer hiring the best and the brightest to serve as law enforcement officers? Is there any evidence that women and people of color are less
Thanks,
effective in law
Sylvia.
enforcement roles? And what message does it send to prospective applicants when the leaders demean them and make judgments about them based solely on the race or gender?
Witness may respond.
So any notion that we have lowered our standards, our hiring standards, is just not accurate.
You had a lady
In
2
fact,
feet
our
smaller
standards
than the
are as
president
competitive and selective
on the
as
Secret
ever.
Service
We
detail.
have tens of thousands of people applying, and our selection rate is about 3.1%, which is more selective than just about any university in the country. And most of our applicants, I think something like 50% of them are coming from military or law enforcement backgrounds. About 50% of them also have advanced degrees. The average age is around 31, which means they're bringing a wealth of personal and professional experience when they arrive. And to suggest that
31,
those
they're just
people,
popping their
because
heads
of
out of their butts.
efforts related to diversity or anything like that are less qualified. Frankly, is not at all consistent with what I see. Having visited all of our field offices and seen these young people in action, I think is an insult to those hardworking men and women who've signed up to dedicate their lives for this country.
Thank you, Director. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI.
How in the hell was he able to use
The
it?
drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller.
So he was able to go
In
back and
addition,
forth,
our
back and forth,
investigation
back and
has
forth. Wow.
uncovered-
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
so,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
so in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2 hours
about
before.
11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself. I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away
Okay.
from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yes.
Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices.
Yep.
There were, we've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call sophisticated operations, or this?
I think,
I don't know. I that's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
yeah, I think it's, we've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the 2 devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is that at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times. At a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
And I'm sure we're going to get into all these subjects a little bit later as well. Tell us what you can about the encrypted platforms we've heard about.
So, one of the things that we're drilling into hard with the shooter, in an effort to try to learn more about his state of mind, his motive, his ideology, his context, everything else, is to look at all of his devices, any social media accounts he had, etc. And one of the things we've learned in finally getting into his phone, which was also a significant technical challenge from an encryption perspective, but in addition, once we got on the phone, it turned out he was using some encrypted messaging application.
And again, the same question relative to the bombs. Was this pretty sophisticated, or is this the kind of the norm you see with folks like similar situation? How would you describe
on this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for not just the FBI but state and local law enforcement all over the
Tell me exactly the scope of. Does the scope of your investigation include what I call that critical 5 minutes from when the 6:09, when this is based, I think, on information you've given to Congress, 6:09 when the shooter's identified on the roof, and 6:14 when President Trump is ultimately escorted off, and all that happens, the shots that take place in between there. Do you have access to the communications that were going on at the time in that critical 5 minutes?
So our investigation, when you say scope, our investigation includes that time frame, although focused again on the shooter himself and his attack. Now, as part of that,
he's obviously involved in that time frame.
correct. And as part of that, as part of our focus, our investigation of the shooter and the attack, of course, we are interviewing law enforcement from the scene because those are some
they
of the
haven't
most
interviewed them yet?
significant witnesses, and we're obviously getting access to their materials and that kind of thing. And the Secret
You're
Service
getting
is
access
fully
to
cooperative.
you're you have access to the communications that exist there?
That exact question, I don't, as I sit here at the moment, I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I know that Secret Service has been cooperative with us.
The Congress would like access to those communications as well. I mean, not just that 5 minutes, although I think that's the critical time frame. There's lots of communications we'd love to have access as well. I see my time is up, and they have called votes on the floor. I think there are about 6 minutes left to vote, so committee will stand in recess until approximately 10 minutes after votes conclude on the House floor.
Okay, guys. What just happened? Sorry, I stepped away to make some coffee. So, is it in recess? Okay, so we are in recess right now. Let me move this to the side. Take you guys up and take you guys with me. I'm making some coffee. So, I'm going to keep that on. When it comes back on, we will get back to it. I'm not liking any of this. I'm not liking any of the word salad. I'm not liking any of the victim shaming and blaming that's coming from Nadler. That man has been an enemy of the state for a really long time. I don't know why he keeps holding office or what idiots keep putting him back in office, but he is not good for this country. He is part of the deep state, and as you can see, he is part of damage control. What is he a part of? He's a part of damage control. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm not really into this grandstanding. You know, we had a good stuff coming forward from our oversight committees thus far, but any committee that has Adam Nadler on is a joke, okay? It's a joke. Nobody respects that man. Absolutely nobody. The only thing that they respect is how much weight he's been able to lose. You know, he's lost a massive amount of weight. Maybe it's from all the drugs pouring across our border. I mean, I don't know. Don't know what kind of diet he's on. If he's on the rest of the diet that America has, well, then we know what kind of diet he's on. I'm just saying. You know me and my smart mouth. My intolerable rhetoric and my intolerable language related to this. And I got to tell you, I'm not really pleased with what we're hearing. Let me turn the light on. Sorry, guys. I didn't realize I didn't have lights on. I didn't have nothing on. There we go. Maybe you guys can see me a little bit better. Okay. And sorry for being in here. This is kind of where we started because it was Bedhead, Wednesday. Happy Hump Day, by the way. It does sound like we are on a recess right now. I've got this on. We will be watching this. I want to hear the horse crap that's coming out of Ray's mouth because I don't trust him. Okay? I'm sorry, I don't trust do I trust the men and women, the worker bees of the SBI? Yes, I think they're amazing people. The people like Jennifer Coffindaffer are amazing employees of our Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's not my problem. It's the hierarchy. It's the corrupt hierarchy that keeps allowing these things to happen. And it just seems like so funny. They can track all of these overseas threats to our democracy, these things that aren't even on our soil. Yet they have the Patriot Act, which allows them to spy on the American people, right? And they know nothing. They have, it's nothing. How can you have nothing? How can you know where to put a bullet in Bin Laden's skull? But you don't know that somebody is doing all this stuff right in front of everybody's nose? It's unbelievable to me. I'm sorry. It's just unbelievable to me that nobody knows nothing, right? Isn't that the criminal's playbook? I don't know nothing. I didn't see nothing. I'm sick of this I don't know nothing. But when we have people overseas, we know a whole lot. And we know that these assholes are spying on us. We know that they are. Let's not forget they are spying on us, right? Sorry, I'm trying to get you guys set up so you don't fall anymore. I need to get some more of those little platforms. Those things are pretty cool. Huh. Look at that. See, I've been using this as a way to hold up because this one arm, that's why I got this one here, which doesn't even hold, can't even hold a freaking iPhone on it. It's tight as tight can get, and my iPhone just wobbles. It's too heavy. These iPhones are too heavy. I never understood why iPhone has to be so much heavier than any other phone. But it's the one that gets the hottest. When these people are there's so many different phones out there that are 10 times better than Apple. I've been reviewing a bunch of products. I'm going to be going back to my Samsung Galaxy. That's what I'm going to do. Make sure it's still running. We still have it running good. So as soon as they're back on, we'll know. What do you guys think of Chris Wray so far? Do you guys are you guys going to believe what he has to say here? I mean, I don't want to put my thoughts in because there's no point. I'm trying to get my audience thoughts. Do you think this is going to help the American people come to realization that this is a lone wolf? I mean, do you like, they're asking him very specific questions about, possibility of other people. And he's saying, no, there's no other people. After 9-10 days, how's the Heritage Foundation able to find this data, right? The Heritage Foundation on the Oversight Project is finding out all these links to Washington, D.C., where Thomas Crooks actually traveled. Why is Crooks traveling to D.C.? Why is he traveling to Maryland? How does our government, I mean, he was on a list, like they had identified him. How and why? And if they had already identified him, why was it such a problem to move him up from suspicious to an actual threat? A lot of these things don't make sense to us. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And remember, these are the people that brought the dossier, the Steele dossier, that lied under oath to have Trump watched. This is the same FBI. We must not forget. This is the hierarchy. This is not the Jennifer Coffendoffers of the FBI. This is the hierarchy. This is the Chris Wrays and their corrupt entity. I'm not willing to accept what he's saying without receipts. And so far, he hasn't proffered one bit of receipt except, oh, we're just supposed to trust him. Well, let me just tell you, we're from the true crime genre. Well, we don't trust no one. And when I say we trust no one, we trust no one. Everyone is suspicious until they're not. Everyone. I don't trust. This is just too obvious of intentional failures. Like, nobody's this stupid to have all of these things fail at this one rally, that just this lone wolf just happened to be at this one day when all these failures happened. Cut it out and give me a break. Yeah, were there failures? There sure were. But when you look at all the failures, they look like they're pretty much intentional failures. You don't have somebody covering a roof he's perched on. He's able to go in and out with different items, right? Did you guys notice that? He was flying a drone, but it was in his vehicle. That means he went back out to his vehicle and came back in. And he went back out to do something here and came back in. Then he went and posted a ladder. Apparently, he allegedly put his gun there earlier that day. Where is the searches of the grounds that we are accustomed to? There's been so many times we were not allowed to go into the rally on time. Like when the gates open, they give you a letter that tell you the gates are open. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to be at a rally today, right? But it was just going to be too hard going to the REC, which I ended up going to. And I want to show you the type of list we get. Might as well. Donald Trump. Where is Donald Trump? Did I erase it? I must have erased it. Hold on. Let me go to my my deleted trash. Where is my instructions. There they are. This is what they look like right here. These are your instructions. And they tell you where to park. They tell you everything. They even give you an aerial of the area. Tell you, look at that, highlighted, no purses or bags, okay? All the things you can't take in. So they give you complete understanding. So on here it says, doors open at 2 p.m. If they're not final, they don't do their final walkthrough and the final clearance of the Secret Service, we're staying out there until that's done. There has been many times that those gates were supposed to open at 2 but didn't open until 2:30 because the final sweep wasn't completed. Now, I can tell you that every single rally I've gone to, I've never seen buildings that close not be part of the enclosed process or have a crap ton of law enforcement in front of it, preventing people from even stepping on the grounds in that area. So this is not uncommon for me to see, but the fact that a man was able to go in and out of that area multiple times, bringing in a gun, bringing in a ladder, having a rangefinder, having a drone, no. There is no possibility. Like, people are there the night before, the days before. Somebody that's doing this is very, very noticeable. Very noticeable to everybody. How is he able to do it? So we're just supposed to believe this lapse in judgment, this oops on this very, very specific day of all days, right before he's about to be the nominee, when we all know Biden could not win this election. And it seems so strategic that Biden didn't step down from his position until after the failed assassination attempt of Donald J. Trump. Seems pretty suspicious to me, if you ask me. Seems pretty suspicious if you ask me. Biden was hell-bent on keeping his nomination and running for 2024 presidency. Everybody told him he's not going to be able to win against Trump, especially after that horrible performance at the debate. He was never going to win. Everybody in America that watched that debate knew he was at a cognitive decline and knows that this cognitive decline didn't just happen overnight. We've been lied to by the Democrat Party for literally over 4 years about the condition of President Biden. And it's all coming back because, again, what's in the dark always comes to light. And President Biden is literally on the phone with all of these people saying he's not going to step down and do whatever you want to do, as Megyn Kelly says. You know, he's whatever, right? And so 50 of his colleagues of the Congress were going to come out and speak out against him about his cognitive decline. And then, boom, assassination attempt, distraction. And then it was so sloppy and so noticeable that they needed to take down the entire internet or portions of the internet to what we call sanitize it. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, the day after President Trump, now remember there was another assassin attempt there. You guys remember that? Another 20-something-year-old tried to get into the RNC and was stopped by police and had a bag with a rifle in it. Did you guys remember that? Yeah, at the RNC. And then all of a sudden, the very next day after he takes the stage and accepts the nomination, boom, airlines go down, banks go down, everything that you need, money and plane trips and rentals, all those things. Also correspondence from person to person. And then boom, everything goes down. That was not just an update glitch, by the way. They have fail-safes in taking down entire networks of people. Never mind, what they failed to tell you is that some of our governmental networks also went down. Our governmental networks went down. What did they scrub off the internet? And then when we started realizing that, oh my gosh, CrowdStrike doesn't seem like it was just an update. It seems very intentional. Bomb Israel! Bomb Israel! You see how this works? None of this is, I'm sorry. You have people coming out saying that they know something's about to happen in the next few weeks. We have people coming out. They won't tell us which congressperson told them that, but that a congressperson did. We have shorts on the market against specifically Donald Trump and Rumble. So obviously somebody knew that this was about to happen. I would like to see our Congress force the SEC to reveal those names. Who put the shorts against Donald Trump Inc. and Rumble? Reveal those names. I want to know who they were. Were they foreign entities or were they domestic? And if they were foreign entities, how did the foreigners know that this day was coming, but our people here on this country did not? Seems like our intel is a little, not what it should be, not up to par. These are the people that are hired to protect us. If they can't even protect the former president of the United States, we're screwed. Dose of reality. If they can't even protect the former president of the United States of America, the rest of us little peons, we're screwed. Like the border, yeah. Is it in recess or has it been, is that it?
Members of the Capitol Police, for example.
Similar situation. How would you
On this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very.
Are we like I can't figure out where we are. Are we like in recess for a few minutes or are they adjourned for the day? Can anybody tell me? That's a long 10 minutes. Oh, so they said it's going to be a 10-minute break, so they should be coming back? Yeah, they have to be coming back because it's still running. House Committee. I just subscribed. If you guys would like, there's the House Committee on the Judiciary. I am subscribing literally to every single person that's talking about this case that's going to give me factual information because, again, this is a case I'm covering. We're covering very intensely. No different than what we cover our other cases, such as Summer Wells, Sebastian Rogers, Layla Santinello. I am going to be putting boots on the ground in Pennsylvania, in Butler, Pennsylvania, in the near future. We've got a few things to wrap up first. I've got to get back out to Tennessee. I've got to work with law enforcement out there to set up our August 26th gathering of voices. And then I've got to do a few ground searches of some areas that I have personally identified. I will be out there doing those. And then I'll be making my way back to the state of Florida. And when I make my way back to the state of Florida, I will be planning a trip. And I may just go directly from Florida. Well, hi. Are you ready to get back up here? Say hi. Give me a second. The boss is calling, okay? The boss is calling. I've got to answer the calls of the boss. Here she is. Come here. I know you love my hand so much. Come get my nuggets. Come get my nuggets. Come get my nuggets. Figured you guys would like to hear her bark, so I'm playing with her. Okay. Come here. Come here. Oh, don't hit her. You got my shoe. You got my shoe. You got my shoe. You are the stealer of shoes. You are the stealer of shoes. Say hi, everybody. I make my mommy so happy. I'm so happy. Say hi. Quit fighting with me. Quit fighting with me. She wants to go. She wants to play with her toys. No, she wants to use mom as a jungle gym. Never mind. Sorry. So I have been really keeping my ears to the ground and trying to follow everything because, again, I'm not looking at my government to provide me the information. You know who I'm going to get the information from? People just like me that are really fighting to seek the truth. We have a few bits of help in our Congress that's acquiring this information and immediately getting it out to the public because they know how we feel. Because in all fairness, they feel kind of the same way. Like, these are too many failures. These are too many failures, known failures. Like, there's no excuse for this. Like, there needs to be more people than the director of the Secret Service that needs to step down, including Chris, everybody's head, every top official that had the responsibility of protecting not only us, but of protecting the former president and the current nominee of the Republican Party, Donald J. Trump. All of them should be fired. They failed at their only job. They failed. If you and I failed this miserably at our job, we would be fired. Okay? If I really got every single, well, no, on here on TikTok, on YouTube, we can get every single thing wrong and people don't care. They care for the drama. Like these hate channels. When have they ever gotten a damn thing right? They've never gotten a case right. They're always on the wrong side of it. And people still tune in to listen to their horse crap. You know? So but in these other places, I'm not going to be, Mama Bear, yes, I was so shocked where we parked. The lady said we couldn't take our umbrellas or chairs, no purses, no vapes, etc. All of it was inside. People had coolers inside? Like we have coolers in the line while we're waiting there for hours and hours. I mean, the front row Joes are known to do that because we use the ice, you know, especially on these hot days, we have a bunch of rags that we throw into the cooler to get them wet. That is, see, this was intentional. I'm sorry. I've never in my life. They usually use TSA, you know, the airport employees, TSA and Secret Service to get us through those metrometers or whatever they're called. I said to my fiance, what's going on? Exactly. That is absolutely unacceptable. I don't know how Secret Service allowed that to happen. I don't know how anybody allowed that to happen. You know what the problem was? Is the majority of Trump's team and like probably the North Carolina women were all in Milwaukee. They were all in Milwaukee getting set up for North Carolina, for the Republican National Convention. I know that Sharon was there. I know that Brick Suit was there. And I remember when we were in Dorrell, I only seen like a handful of our North Carolina women. And they bring their sons. Their sons are the ones that do the ushering up and down the aisles and stuff like that and keep people kind of, make sure they're out of the aisle, you know, and stuff. And so having coolers inside the rally is a major, major no-no because anybody can pack those coolers with bomb-making material. Even if they open the lids, you don't know what's in around them because there's a lot thick foam that you can lift, you know, unseal the cooler and put stuff around it and take all that stuff. There's no way. Smoke and Scandal, Damon should try a live stream duet. Oh, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. Director Wray he's been a joke. Most of these high level people are a freaking joke. They're too busy being at the yacht club and playing golf. They're not running their organizations. They're not running their organizations. I feel so bad because there are some people, especially in leadership positions, that are under this new FBI that are just toxic. They were poisoned, right? They were poisoned with bad conduct and bad behavior and taught how to get away with stuff. Well, this is one thing that I don't think the American people are going to allow them to get away with. You could pull this back in Reagan, and you can pull this back in Kennedy. But what you can't do is pull this with Donald J. Trump. He's too big. We are going to absolutely demand answers. We're going to absolutely be asking for people to step down and resign from their position because they failed at their freaking job. And somebody lost their life because of it. It's unacceptable. It's inexcusable. We're not, as American people, going to excuse it. Chris Wray also needs to stand down and step down and resign. And if Colonel Paris was also involved or, responsible for the safety, he himself should do the same thing. Everybody's head should roll. If this was Biden or Harris, we would be demanding the same darn thing. Nobody's life should be in jeopardy. And there was, at the end of the day, there was a life lost. And that's totally unacceptable. It was an innocent man there with his family. Children had to witness that. Young children. Young children. We're here every single day on this platform for our children. And this is disgusting. So I don't know when this oversight committee is going to reconvene. I don't know why they have it off to the people. I mean, is it going to be one of these things where they don't come back on? I don't know. Did they say, what did they say? Because we got 2,700 people still watching the oversight committee. Are you cold? Aw, my baby girl's cold. Hold on. She's shivering over here. There you go. There you go. I love these little fleece blankies. I still haven't found the brown one. She must have pulled it into something. I don't know where it's at. I've looked under the bed. The only place I haven't looked under is the recliner. She likes to go up under one of the recliners. It's just to keep you warm. Just to keep you. There you go. That better? You got a big comfy? Okay, that's better. All right. She's the boss. She's got to be comfortable. Can you try and cover it? Cover what? They're going to vote. Voting something on the House floor. Sounds like they took a break to do some kind of vote. Why did they make the vote? Why didn't they make the vote public? If they're doing some type of vote, then they're probably, then it's probably a vote that doesn't make sense. Why would they block the public from a vote? Then they're probably arguing on the floor right now. That's probably what's taking so long. Get a whole bunch of Democrats and Republicans in from both sides of the aisle. Right? It's like a tossed salad up in there. This could go on for an hour. Her parents were the ones who discovered her. Really sad. Who are we talking about? I'm missing something. Saw a video. He was laying in the stands, and everyone was hollering, Sandy. Oh, he got shot. Yeah, there was people hollering in the stands. I heard that you could clearly hear him. He's hitting the head. He's hitting the head. And they were all just, he was hitting the head. Who knows? The bullet he got might have been the one that hurt Trump or his services. I mean, at the end of the day, he protected his family. He protected his wife. He protected his daughter. And you know what? It was our government's responsibility to protect him. And they failed. They failed all of us. This is our security. Do you know how much more emboldened people are that are here? Like, you just heard Chris Wray talk about how he's concerned with the open border. How that he's told the President of the United States the potential of having these people from other countries coming in through our border to do harm here in this country. And yet Biden is insistent on keeping that border open. So why do you think Biden would insist on keeping the border open when his own FBI, top FBI agent that he hired, is telling him all of these problems that are coming in to this country? It doesn't make sense. And you just heard him state it. You just heard him state it. This is insane to me. So I expect them to be arguing right now. I don't know why they're taking a vote. Let me just hear the vote that they're taking. Because it's already been 20 minutes. 21 minutes. 28 minutes. So it's already...
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area. About 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself. I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is 4 o'clock p.m. So again, the F1 back in his...
By people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's... we've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves. Vehicle was killed by law enforcement. He had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times. At a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous. And I'm sure we're going to be drilling into hard any social encryption perspective, but
this is the kind of the norm you see with folks like, similar situation. How would you
on this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for.
I disagree.
609, when this is based, I think, on the information you've given, patients that were going on at the time. In the
shooter himself and his now as part of that.
Let me know if it comes back on.
Correct, and as part of that, as part of significant witnesses, I sit here at the moment. I don't
time frame. There's approximately 10 minutes after vote.
Okay, let me go back.
Votes on the floor. I think there are about 6 minutes left in votes. So committee will stand in recess until approximately 10 minutes after votes conclude on the House floor.
Okay, so they have votes on the House floor, and so they said 10 minutes after. They'll resume 10 minutes after all the votes on the House floor are concluded. The House floor, six, you got, I don't know how many people are part of this oversight committee for the Federal Bureau of Investigations, but it sounds like they've got 6 things, so that makes sense. So that's what's taking so long, because everybody's going to be speaking. You got every turn possible, so it could be literally an hour. We're already through 30 minutes of it, so I'll just try to talk until we can at least get this back up. If not, then I'll monitor what Chris Wray says today, and then we'll do like a little video, or maybe after the hearing is over, we may resume with another live, just expressing what we learned in there, so we're not all, saddled here with staying, here. Guys, give me just a second. Well, I gotta make a quick phone call here to someone. Hold on a second. Let me find it. Give me just a second. You guys will see me, but you just won't be able to hear me. All right, guys, thank you so much for being patient with me. The oversight committee has not resumed yet, so we are monitoring it. I know they're doing some voting on the House floor, so I have a funny feeling it's going to come back on, but it's going to be a while. I'm not going to bend your ear too much. I'm going to monitor this the rest for myself, and then later tonight we will bring some clips up about this hearing that I thought were the most notable clips, and get those to you at that time, because if you guys would like to watch it in its entirety, you guys can. It's right here. It's called The Oversight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and it's on the House. Here's the YouTube channel. So the House Committee on the Judiciary. The House Committee on Judiciary. So they're running their own live stream on their own YouTube channel. So everybody that wants to watch this in its entirety most definitely can. So this is going to conclude our show for today. I'm going to be collecting some more information related to Sebastian Rogers' case, anything that we can do. We're going to be looking at some different interviews that we have not discussed or looked at in a while. And that will be coming later today. I'll probably do an afternoon briefing of this oversight hearing. And then tonight around 8 or 9 p.m., we will be coming for a Sebastian Rogers case to end out the evening. So hopefully you guys stick with me. If you guys see some videos, please support the channel by watching the videos, giving everything a thumbs up. And if you'd like, comment, share it. You know, if you see a community, a group out there on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, share the content. Let people know that we are covering this case. I will be boots on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania in due time to cover this case from boots on the ground viewpoint. And hopefully we'll get some more answers that our government's not willing to provide us. I don't listen to our government, just like I don't listen to law enforcement. I'm a behaviors person. I like the truth. I like to find out the truth for myself. If I can see it, touch it, and feel it, then I'll believe it. Okay? And I truly believe my audience is much of the same. So until we get out there, I don't trust anything. I really don't, and I'm not going to. This is where one of our own was shot and killed. 2 others were wounded. They almost took out our nominee for our side. And it's unacceptable. And this looks like, and they're trying to pass it off as just incompetence. This is not just incompetence. These type of incompetent decisions are not made. Koberger asked for trials to be moved, yes, I heard, to Boise, which we kind of knew. I knew way, way, way before they even, I was out there when this happened, just right after he was arrested, after January in 2023. January 2023, we were out there, and I was sitting in front of the courthouse saying that they, you know, when they do the, the motion for venue change.
The committee will come to order. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
we're back.
Thank you, Director Wray, for being here with us today. Before I ask anything, let me just echo the comments made by others.
We're back. I was ready to let go.
Decrying the state of political violence in this country. It's completely unacceptable. We have a democratic system that allows for us to disagree, but not to take those disagreements to violence. That's what we have elections for.
Yeah, tell the Democratic side that, because I'm sorry.
All of the FBI.
I don't think any of us are that stupid.
You do, and frankly, the abuse, unwarranted abuse and criticism that have been directed to you by conspiracy theorists and others.
I'll go blow it, lady.
Make your hard job any easier, and I want you to know that many of us notice that and appreciate the work that you and your team are doing.
All right.
Let me just
damage
ask
control.
a couple of quick questions. First, many of us are interested in the motives of the shooter here. When it's an assault on a political figure, you immediately assume there's a political motive, and that may be the case here. We don't know yet. But I was interested in what you're seeing on his phone. The press has reported that he had pictures not only of Mr. Trump, but of Mr. Biden and various other members, political figures. Can you
Smoke and
discern,
mirrors.
was there, an element of, mainly Republicans, maybe Democrats? Was it all over the board? Can you enlighten us about that?
Well, this is a place where it's particularly important for me to reiterate the caveat that I've included before, because in this instance in particular, we have a lot of legal process out for additional accounts and things like that that the shooter is associated with. So we're hoping to learn more, and we're still exploiting a number of the digital devices. I think it's fair to say that we do not yet have a clear picture of his motive, and I think it's important for me to explain, because I understand, of course, why everybody wants to know the answers to those questions. Often in an investigation, from interviewing people that the subject was in close contact with, looking at the individual's social media accounts, messages, often things, physical evidence in the person's residence. You might see a manifesto, things like that. We're not seeing that yet, but we are digging in hard, because this is one of the central questions for us. What I can say is that the shooter appears to have done a lot of searches of public figures in general, but so far we're seeing kind of news articles and things like that. And so the images that have been reported about, really what we're talking about there are when you do a news search of an article, the image appears in the cache, as opposed to like a search for that specific individual. But again, I really want to be clear that that's a place that we're doing a lot of work right now. So more to come.
Thank you for that clarification. We're interested also in the role of access to weapons when it comes to this terrible crime. The shooter used a semi-automatic rifle, really a weapon of war, that sadly...
It's a rifle that's souped up, a .223, so don't let these people lie to you. It's a rifle that has other stuff around it to make it look harder than it is. It's a .223 rifle.
National answer to curbing the epidemic of gun violence in America. I wonder if you could, with your help, Director Wray, understand a few aspects of the investigation. It's my understanding that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, was quickly able to trace the gun's purchaser, using records from an out-of-business gun store, records that the government is required to correct. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have suggested that collection should stop. There have been efforts to digitize it, which have been resisted. Can you tell us about how the origin of this gun purchase was discovered and the technology used?
I guess what I can say is we located a number of firearms associated with the shooter and his family.
Who is his family?
A total of, I think, 14 in the house. The weapon that he used for the attempted assassination was an AR-style rifle that was purchased legally, that he, is my understanding, acquired, I think bought actually from his father, who was the one who originally bought it, again, legally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, so I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Director, I'll try to ask questions that are answerable too. I think that's been done pretty well on both sides. You do the advanced threat assessment and deliver that information as to the general threat and then specifics as to protected people to the Secret Service. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. The Secret Service does a threat assessment, but they're doing that based on intelligence that they receive from a number of sources, including, of course, the FBI. So we share, whenever we have threat information related to a particular individual or protectee, then we share it with the Secret Service at a number of levels.
So you're a participant, but ultimately the responsibility for threat assessment as to these individuals belongs to the Secret Service.
Well, again, the threat assessment for the individual belongs to the Secret Service, but we are an important part of that because we share threat information, if we have any. They get threat information from a variety of sources.
So, and you get them from the same variety of sources. They've got no sources that are excluded from the FBI, do they?
Well, I don't know. I'm not aware of any that are excluded from the FBI, but they may receive information that comes directly to them that didn't come to us.
Sure. Okay. Director, do you believe that former President Trump was a high-risk threat under your assessment?
Well, I believe that former President Trump can really, frankly, like any president or former president, is a very high-profile figure and attracts a lot of, unfortunately, the kind of risk we've been talking about.
It's fair to say, not on a scale of 1 to a million with little nuances, but on a scale of 1 to 10, President Trump's risk was very similar to a current president, very similar
Yes.
to, because he was the presumptive nominee and leading in the polls and so on, that he was a high risk by any standard. Is that correct?
Certainly, there's a reason why he has so much protection around him.
Okay, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of assassinated senator and the nephew of an assassinated president, would you say he was also, as a presidential candidate, at significant risk?
Again, I think any presidential candidate raises some level of risk. It might vary from candidate to
No, but he's clearly a risk. Okay. So, in a nutshell, the day before this attack, President Trump was documented not to have gotten on multiple occasions from the Secret Service what they asked for. The day after, it looks like they're getting more. The day before, RFK had been denied by the president multiple times, Secret Service protection. The day after, he now has it. So now my question is the actions of a 20-year-old with a lone gunman on a roof sufficient to change the risk assessment in your mind for President Trump and RFK? Or are we just realizing the threat that was always there and being more appropriate in matching it? And I know that's a little vague, but you've been at this for a long time. Hindsight is 20/20. Now that we have hindsight, is it fair to say that giving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. security, upping the security, including drones, overhead support for the president, former president, these are all things that in hindsight should have been done the day before?
Well, let me try to answer your question this way. Of course, as
Word
I said,
salad.
the assessments of the level of security to be provided to individual protectees.
No, I understand it's a Secret Service decision.
But what I would say to you is that, and I've been saying for quite some time, including in front of committees of this Congress, that we are in an elevated threat environment, and we have
Wonder
been
why.
for some time. And that
Put a
comes from
bullseye on
variety of
Trump.
quarters.
Time to put a
It
bullseye
is
on Trump.
It is, quite frankly, a dangerous time to be a prominent public official.
In regards to that, the other side has spent a lot of time talking about what people on the right have said. But there was an attempted assassination on a Supreme Court justice. We have had the highest ranking senator on the other side of this body saying that there were actions, that they were accountable. We have had multiple members of Congress in both the House and the Senate berating the character of members of the Supreme Court as a result of their decisions made, both, sometimes 6-3, sometimes unanimous, whatever. Are those comments, not any one of them, but are those comments and the generation of that sort of, oh, this guy's bad for democracy, this Supreme Court justice is a threat to democracy, is that the kind of thing that raises the threat level?
Aw, thank
Would
you, Jen.
Caution against that.
Well, I do believe that we've seen an increase in threats of violence, which again, that's the FBI's lane, not rhetoric, no matter how despicable or heated it is, but violence and threats of violence. We have seen an uptick in threats towards judges, among other prominent public officials, including, as you say, a case that we helped investigate involving a threat to a sitting Supreme Court justice.
An attempt.
An attempt.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. And I think it's a reflection of a broader phenomenon that we are seeing in this country, where people, again, very passionate, I respect that, very angry, I respect that, but there's a right way and a wrong way to express yourself when you're angry.
I agree with that.
And violence and threats of violence just can't be it.
Or conspiracies in our
That's where we
government.
fit in. It's not my role as FBI director to call out,
particular people's rhetoric. There's a place for that, but that's not my role as FBI director. But when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that has to be treated as unacceptable, and that's the way we look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Director, when did the FBI learn that Iran was threatening President Trump's life?
So I want to be a little bit careful here, not to talk about
Word
specific
salad.
classified information, but we have been for quite some time, and I'll stick with what's in the open record. We, for some time, and I in particular for some time, have been calling out the efforts by the Iranian government
Thank you,
to
Jen.
attempt to retaliate for the killing of Soleimani by going after current or former prominent U.S. officials, and we've even had an indictment against it. And
Not answering the question. What
We
date?
need to recognize the brazenness of the Iranian
What
regime,
date?
including right here in the United States. And I expect that we're going to see more of it, and I expect there'll be more coming on that. I'm not aware of any.
He's
threat
just
information,
drawing down their time. Why are
related
they
to
not making him answer the
techniques that
question?
wasn't, passed in a timely way, but I can't really get into specifics here.
It's a minority's time here, but I just felt that was a question the committee needed to understand, and it sounds like you've known that for a long time, and that information was conveyed to the Secret Service.
Any
Thank you.
information related to
Thank
threats
you, Ms.
against
Ms. Lee.
the former president, which again, as we've sort of talked about, is happens all too often, is something that we
Hey,
have a whole
SPED
process
teacher.
we
It's
routinely
nice to
share
see you, my
with
love.
Secret Service at a number of levels in a timely way, and to my knowledge, that has consistently been followed.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Director Wray. Director Wray, the FBI is the independent law enforcement agency under the Department of Justice. Is that correct?
Yes.
And does the FBI director currently report to anyone?
Well, chain of command, reporting structure kind of thing. Yeah, so the FBI is part of the Justice Department. On the org chart, you would see that the FBI director, and this has been true for decades, reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General. Obviously, reports in a communication sense. I report to any number of people.
As opposed to a micromanagement reporting system?
Correct.
And you would take issue, would you not, with any proposal that would change or alter that chain of command and place you or place a FBI director in the position of reporting directly to the president? Would you not? You would oppose that?
I don't think that would be a wise reporting structure. I think the structure that we've had for decades now makes sense.
That doesn't work.
I think there's a difference between independence in a sort of organizational structure perspective.
So you
and
run
independence
free
in
and
terms
have
of
no
the
one
way
to
you
answer
work.
to.
Obviously, the
Reporting
FBI,
directly.
the FBI is part of the Justice Department.
Well, reporting directly to the president would eliminate your independence, would it not?
I don't think it would help.
Yeah. And you're familiar with Project 2025, are you not?
Oh, good gracious.
I mean, I've seen news reports about it. I'm not
You're aware that
particularly familiar with it.
You're aware that it is a game plan for President Trump's first 120 days in office, correct?
I hope our Republicans step up in this questioning, because this is not answering the questions that the American people have. We have questions about what happened on July 13th, 2024. July 13th, 2024.
He also wants to eliminate the position of FBI General Counsel. That is also set forth.
Sir, what does this have to do with the attempted assassination of President Donald J. Trump?
The FBI's Office of General Counsel serves an incredibly important role, including in terms of advising our work.
He doesn't. He has nothing to do with 2025. It was probably put out by the hierarchy or the, cohorts of the Democratic Party to have talking points, because they have none. Excuse me,
Well, it would
guys.
seem like
I'm a little heated.
any proposal that would
But it was a lie. Just like the Steele
force
dossier,
directed
just like the felony charges,
president,
just like everything else. It's all lies.
there would be no
It's just irritating.
legal counsel for the director of the FBI. That seems like it's an attempt to neuter the FBI and render it
The FBI sucks. They need to be neutered. They need to be they just need to be brought down, just dismantled and
Let me put it
rebuilt.
this way, I recognize that the FBI director, this FBI director and every FBI director before me serves at the pleasure of the president. And that's part of our system. I was appointed by President Trump. I respect that. I think that's a part of our structure.
Trust
But
me, he made a
in terms of
mistake.
How we do our work is what matters.
Huge
to me.
mistake.
And we need to be able to do our work in a way that is free from political interference.
well, you wouldn't be able to do that by reporting everything you do to the president and getting his authority and approval before you take action, correct?
I don't think that would be a wise approach.
And then there's even a proposal to replace many of those 38,000 dedicated civil servants who work for the FBI, replace them with a MAGA group
MAGA group, huh?
that has pledged its allegiance to Donald Trump.
Oh, that's what it is. That's not rhetoric.
To the FBI, if that were to happen.
Well, again,
That man
I
needs to be
haven't
fired
read
from
or
his job.
reviewed
Both of those
everything
men
that
need to
you're
be fired from
referring
his
to.
job.
What I say is,
But
Political
the FBI is made
grandstanding
up of-
in the
the
middle
FBI
of trying to find out what
38,000
happened to the attempted
career
assassination
law
of Donald J.
enforcement
Trump.
professionals. It has no political appointees of any kind unless you count me as a
You don't
nominee
want
of the
that to
former
change
president.
either.
I don't think that should change. I
You don't
think
want
that is
a bunch
that is
of MAGA
part of how we do
loyalists.
our work.
MAGA.
Right.
I'm part of MAGA, sir.
Employees of the FBI.
And I can tell you, we would run this country a hell of a lot better than this horse crap right here. Sir.
It's crazy to take 38,000 MAGA loyalists and put them at the FBI. That's
Oh,
frightening.
Jesus.
That's what
Excuse my
Project
language.
2025
Give me a
proposes.
cut it
I know
out.
that you are, not-
This is what America does not want or need right now, right here. We need to be uniting, and he took time instead of asking. Shame on him. American died out there.
We did not have any information
Shame on him.
About the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
No communication in any chat rooms, no CIs or confidential human sources have any interaction?
No, we've run a thorough search for the subject through all of our holdings, and he was not in them anywhere.
Were there any FBI agents or informants present at the Trump rally in Butler?
Come on, Matt.
Not to my knowledge.
And Mr. Jordan,
Not
was
to
talking
my
you
knowledge,
about Iran.
We saw one of your agents
Were
in the
law
crowd.
enforcement resources diverted from the protection of President Trump to John Bolton as a consequence of concern that Mr. Bolton might have been the target of Iranian malign efforts?
That's really a Secret Service decision. I don't know the answer to that.
You
That's
should.
really something they
It's
would
your
know better. What I
investigation,
can
sir.
tell you is that there are a number of individuals. You mentioned one who we've brought a case, a specific criminal case for the Iranians targeting for assassination. But how the
Are you
Secret
gonna get
Service
that answer
allocates-
to us, whether or not resources were diverted from Trump to Bolton? Is that just gonna be part of your review?
I think that's going to be part of the reviews by the inspector general.
The Inspector
and
General for
after-
DHS, right?
Of DHS
Right,
and
and
the outside panel.
You see how they keep
I think
saying,
that's
"Oh, it's
important.
the Secret Service." Secret Service says it's the
DHS is
FBI. The
really
FBI
in
says
favor
it's
with the
yeah.
administration because he's been pointing out all the problems on the border with Mayorkas and Biden, and we're always kind of worried that they're about to fire him, which would be a really bad idea now that this role that you've identified is so critical. Be a bad idea to fire the IG for DHS during the pendency of this, right, Mr. Director?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I'm with you on that. So I want to zoom out a little bit. How often do you brief President Biden? No, just
Specific
generally.
case?
No, in your role as FBI director.
I mean, I don't know that I could give you a number.
Is it like weekly, monthly, daily?
It's not at a regular cadence.
Word salad.
There have been times when there have been months at a time when
Can't-
I haven't.
can't
and
tell
then
him
there have been
nothing.
times when several days apart.
pretty
I
specific
have.
question.
It's always with other people.
The vice president, is she typically there?
Often has been.
Okay, so when did you notice his decline?
Boom.
In my interactions, in my role, all my interactions with the current president have been completely professional.
Right,
That's
but
not
I
answering
mean,
the
his
question.
the cognitive decline. I'm not saying he treated you unprofessionally, just maybe not picking things up as quickly as he used to.
Again, I don't meet with him very often.
No, that's
but
not what you
you're
just said.
describing is not something that I've observed during my interactions with him.
Bullshit.
I mean, we've had it observed so often that the ranking member and Mr. Schiff on this committee have said that he could no longer continue as a candidate. And so, since you're the FBI director, I was just sort of wondering, like, who's running the country? Like if something, if something bad happened, you'd have to go brief President Biden about it right now. God forbid.
And on any number of occasions, I have briefed the president, and as I said, those briefings have all been uneventful and unremarkable.
That's Matt Gaetz.
I can imagine them being uneventful.
I think he's going to be putting in his bid for governor.
Vice president's also president.
And if Byron doesn't, I will be
You say
supporting
there's,
him.
like more than half the time. there's these
100%.
briefings, she's there too.
I don't know if I said more than half the time. Certainly, there have been times where she's been present. There have been other times where she hasn't.
I take you at your word when you say this is the most complicated threat environment you've ever observed over a long career in law enforcement. And I'm just kind of wondering, with this assassination attempt, with the invasion at our border, with all the Hamas that have been let in that you've talked about and briefed about, like, is Biden up to it? And if he's not up to it, and you're a guy who's been regularly briefing him, like, who's been in on this conspiracy to hide the real Joe Biden from all of us for years? It never occurred to you that this guy wasn't up to it in all these briefings you did?
As I said, my briefings with the president
Sounds like you're derelict in
have
your
been
duties,
completely
dude.
Fine.
Were they between
Quit
8
lying
p.m.
to the
and
American
7
people.
Questions. There hasn't been anything of note in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah, did you ever have to brief him before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m.? We hear those are his good hours.
I certainly times that I have briefed have included outside those hours.
Right. Okay. I just, I think the American people want to know how we got to this point with someone who's so diminished his own party has basically put him out to pasture. And since you had close proximity and the vice president had close proximity, I'm just kind of wondering if you were being straight with all of us about how things were going with him.
Amen.
You can count on me to be straight with you, sir.
We'll see.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is
He
recognized.
even laughed.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like
Okay.
to recognize the unfortunate fact that our colleague and my colleagues side by side made for many, many years in this committee. Sheila Jackson Lee is no longer with us. She was a great member and a force for America, and her loss is
Amen, Kim Cass.
great.
Tim Cass.
Secondly, I'd like to say to the FBI director that there were some remarks made when you were introduced, preemptory remarks saying that people don't have great faith in the FBI and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have great faith in the FBI.
I don't.
And I think most of us on this side of the aisle do. We appreciate your work and appreciate your being here. Some on the other side of the aisle have cast aspersions upon the FBI. And
I wonder why. We can only say Steele dossier loud enough.
That's their business.
Lying
I'm
to a
law
judge.
enforcement. The FBI is the top.
Let me list the ways.
In our country, so I thank you and all of your people that work with you. Secondly, there's been some questions about the FBI maybe being weaponized. Did President Biden ever ask you to get involved in the case in Orlando, Florida, where Kevin McCarthy says that Mr. Gates is investigated for some
good
sexual
gracious.
involvement with a 17-year-old girl?
Well, we had cooperation from both sides the first 2 days. Whatever committee this is, you guys need to fire them. They're the toxicity of this country right here.
Butler, Pennsylvania. I read
Cancer.
something about a
Cancer is
ladder
the best
used
way
a
to
ladder
call
to
these
get up
people
on
that are
the roof,
grandstanding.
And that the ladder was found somewhere a distance away. Is that true?
So we do know that he purchased a ladder. I think if I recall correctly, it was about a 5-foot tall type of ladder. But importantly, we did not find the ladder at the scene. So it's not clear that he used the ladder to get on top of the roof.
So you don't think
we're
the
still
ladder-
digging into all that, things related to the ladder and his access to the roof. But he did buy a ladder, but the ladder was not found at the scene.
Ladder didn't have any feet on it. It didn't walk off.
Right.
Thank you, sir. There have been a lot of threats against public officials. We've seen Mr. Scalise terribly shot, and we
we saw Gabby Gifford shot and other Congress people, and many of us have had death threats. And the FBI has been made aware of those to protect.
Oh,
us.
Wabag, I don't see you being shot
We've also
shot in the
election
head,
officials
dude.
and poll
Just
workers threatened.
saying.
What is the FBI doing in consultation with other law enforcement to ensure every eligible voter can safely and confidently cast a ballot this year?
So when it comes to threats to election workers in particular, we participate in the election threats task force that DOJ set up. We also, and there've been quite a number already of arrests and convictions under that task force. We have got a number of investigations underway that involve all kinds of threats to election workers, ranging from online threats to there was even some mailings that included fentanyl. So there's been a number of types of threats to election workers, and these are, after all, people who are putting in their own time for the good of the country to try to help us have a functioning democracy. And so the idea that they would be targeted with violence is just outrageous. We are sharing information with election officials about things to be on the lookout for. We have election crime coordinators in all 50 states.
You'll be prepared for election day with additional, if the FBI will be looking out for them.
Yes.
Thank you. Jeffrey Epstein, been in the news a lot lately about involvement with certain people high in politics involved. Did the FBI conduct a raid on his townhouse in New York when he was incarcerated in New York? There was a raid on his
What does this have to do with Trump?
Well, I don't know about a raid. I know we executed a number of searches in the course of our fairly extensive investigation.
Sorry, guys, I had to get
Tell
a
me
chair.
during that search
I can't
you came
sit in the
across
bed
and
any
have
longer.
within your possession of the FBI tapes of him with other individuals that he might have taken in people in compromising.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything I can share related to that. I can see if there's information we can provide and maybe get back to you on it.
If there were tapes of people in prominent positions, friends of his, he'd pose for pictures with, possibly in compromising positions, it would be, the public, I think, has a right to see those.
Well, I mean, how we handle evidence recovered in a criminal investigation has all kinds of rules that apply to it. I recognize the intense public interest in the subject, but we have to follow our rules. But I'm happy, like I said, I'm happy to follow up with my team on it.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your service, and
Hunter Biden laptop?
thank you for being here today.
You wonder why we don't
Gentlemen,
trust
yield
you?
last 5. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here. How many shots did the shooter fire?
Well, we know that he fired at least 8 because we recovered 8 cartridges on him.
That's a lot.
Okay, and are all the cartridges and the unspent bullets, have they been, you know how many there
This
are?
is Andy
accounted for all
Briggs.
of those?
We,
So I assume yeah.
we believe we have. Again, there's lots of work still ongoing, but yes, we believe we have accounted.
And did the recovered shells, the cartridges, match the shooter's rifle?
My recollection is yes.
And you conducted analysis that confirms that?
Well, we work with ATF, but yes, so some of the work has been divided up. But
And how many shells casings were recovered from the location of the counter snipers?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
From the counter snipers location?
That I don't have the answer, at least here at my fingertips.
Okay.
Interesting.
Did the blood and tissue pattern of the shooter, did it match the stories or the witness testimony that you've heard so far?
Can you, I'm not sure I'm
You can't seem to
following
understand
the
English.
question.
Well, I assume you've interviewed the counter snipers, or you have that evidence, and other witnesses describing the kill of the shooter. And I'm wondering if the blood and tissue and brain matter is consistent with the testimony that you're receiving. In other words, is the
In
physical...
terms of the manner of death?
Exactly. Is the physical evidence consistent with where the shot from the counter sniper took place?
Yeah, so the autopsy is being handled by, as is not unusual, the state authorities. My understanding is, thus far, I don't think it's fully complete, which is not totally unusual. But so far, nothing remarkable on that front.
That's from the body itself, but from actually the scene where the shooter was found is everything consistent with the testimony, the physical evidence at the scene? Is that consistent with the testimony you've seen, that you've heard so far?
So far, yes. Again, ongoing investigation.
Were you able to determine whether the shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant though to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe, because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around before.
Just all the witnesses on the ground.
Obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have a scope?
I believe so, but as I sit here right now, I don't remember.
Okay. You mentioned about 2 hours before the incident that he'd had a drone and he was using a drone. Instead of me putting words in your mouth, just tell me how you discovered the drone, how you discovered the time, and how you discovered, if you can describe what he would have been observing with the drone and how you determined that.
So this is something that's very much ongoing right now. We're going back and forth with our lab as they continue to do work on it. What I would say is the drone was in his car. As I said, we've been able to, by exploiting the drone, determine its use and flight paths. There were no pictures or videos on the drone of the day of the rally, for example, but we have been able to reverse engineer the flight path of the drone from the day of the rally, and that's how we know that for about 11 minutes, from I think it's around 3:50 p.m. to 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, he was flying the drone, and we have the flight path. It's about 200 yards away from where former President Trump would ultimately be speaking.
So 11 minutes.
So that would have primarily given him a vantage point. I'm trying to think how to describe this. If the former president's podium is that way, the drone would be over here looking, say 200 yards again off this way, looking back. So it would have shown the shooter, we think. Again, we're still doing more work on this. I really want to qualify what I'm saying, but I'm trying to be transparent and lean in here. We think it would have shown him kind of what would have been behind him.
When you say behind him, behind the shooter.
Correct. Like in other words, almost like giving him a rear view mirror of the scene behind him, except again, he wasn't flying it overhead while he was later back for the assassination.
But he would have had, with the drone, he would have been able to also assess kind of where, because the stage I assume was
Does this sound like an unplanned
assess that angle
guy with no training?
Forward and backward, I assume.
Well, certainly going towards the podium. Again, we're still trying to figure out exactly what he saw because we're having to, in effect, because there's no recording of what he saw during those 11 minutes, our hypothesis at this point, the experts think he would have been live streaming it. And so we're trying to, in effect, say, okay, if this was the flight pattern, given these capabilities of the drone, what would you have seen? What could you have seen for those 11 minutes? And again, it wasn't over the stage or the kind of the hub of the rally. It was about 200 yards away, but it looks like it would have
should have been seen by Secret Service.
Let's say,
that
like
was paying attention to the area.
Or,
people were already inside the bullpen.
Great, thank you, Mr.
How many separate times was the shooter on the premises?
So again, with the caveat that we're continuing to do work on it, we believe that the first time he traveled to the grounds was, I think, a week before.
Wow.
He spent roughly 20 minutes there. Then he went to the grounds again on the morning of the event, it appears, for about 70 minutes, I think. But again, I've qualify that. I'd have to go back and look to be sure of that part. And then he came back in the afternoon, so that would be, I guess, a third time for good.
but that included things like this drone activity we just talked about.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for appearing. Thank you for the
Another
extraordinary job
swamp
that you're
monkey.
doing. Please convey our thanks to the men and women at the Bureau for their incredible work. I've worked with them since I was an
Mr.
assistant
Shifty
U.S.
Shift
attorney
Shift.
more than 30 years ago. Let me start with a threshold question I'm curious about. When I applied to be an assistant U.S. attorney, I had to go through a background check. Do candidates for the FBI have to go through background checks?
Yes.
Would someone with dozens of felony convictions survive a background check for the Bureau?
No.
So they would never be hired by the Bureau?
No.
Well, clearly the Bureau has, you don't have to comment on this, I know you won't, but clearly the Bureau has higher standards for their hiring than one of America's great political parties. Let me turn to the events of the tragic shooting. Have you been able to gain access to the shooter's electronic communications, social media?
These people
and
should
with
be
the caveats
fired.
that you mentioned,
If they're in your
the
state,
investigation's still
don't vote
early.
for them.
Have you been able to make any deductions, or are there any indications of the shooter's motivation from those electronic holdings?
So in terms of our ability to access it, we have been able to get into and exploit a number of electronic devices, digital devices, but not all of them yet. And then within his various accounts, we've been able to get access to some of them, but some of them we're still waiting on. Some of them we may never get access to because of the encryption issue, that it presents an increasingly vexing barrier for law enforcement, not just the FBI, but for law enforcement all over the country. But we're still drilling into that. We have some information. Some places we've been able to look, some places we will be able to look, some places we may never be able to see, no matter how good our legal process is. But that's what we're looking at right now. In terms of what we've been able to find so far, a lot of the usual repositories of information have not yielded anything notable in terms of motive or like ideology. Having said that, it does appear fairly clear that he was interested in public figures, kind of more broadly, and I think this is important.
Bullshit.
That starting somewhere around July 6th or so, he became very focused on former President Trump and this rally. And so one of the things that I can share here today that has not been shared yet is that we've just in the last couple of days found that from our review, to your point about devices, analysis of a laptop that the investigation ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. And that is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
And when you say that his electronic holdings indicated an interest in different public figures, without revealing anything you're not comfortable revealing about those public figures, can you tell us anything generally about them, either the offices they hold, their political party, or was it simply people of a high profile?
Well, a couple things. First, the images that we've recovered so far from, I can't remember which of his various devices, appeared to be what we call cached images from searches of news articles. So if you do a news article search, of course, if there are photos on it, those photos get stored automatically in your cache, as opposed to me searching or him searching for a specific person and getting images of that person. As far as the pictures that are like that, doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it so far. Other than
his
these,
search
all
requests.
prominent public people, but they cover both parties, they cover both
But what were his
US
search
people and even some foreign
requests? You know, what produced
public
those
officials.
results?
So that part doesn't appear to, that one repository of information doesn't appear to be overly indicative of motive, other than interest in public figures, but that could be just because he was reading news stories. So we're still trying to drill into that. That's why all of these outstanding legal process returns that we're waiting on for various accounts, platforms, et cetera, you know, any one of them could be one that would have very indicative, very important information.
If I could be permitted one very short additional question, Chairman. From that, any indication of any other particular target, that is someone who was not just sort of generically the subject of the searches you described, but for which there was more of an interest than others?
There's the information I just described at the moment does not appear particularly indicative of targeting in its own right. But again, that dot, once we get other information, could connect in a way that might be more meaningful. But I'm sharing that piece of information with this committee and with the American public, but I think it's important that we put down a qualification. This does not appear to be some kind of target list or something like that. This is cached images from running searches of news stories. And again, there's nothing at the moment, there's no pattern from that particular piece of information that is overly remarkable so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Director, you previously told us that you consider the situation on the southern border to be a massive security threat to our country. Is that still your assessment?
I stand by my prior testimony, and in fact, just in the last month or so, we've conducted a significant series of arrests. I say we, our Joint Terrorism Task Force, is working with ICE of a number of individuals with suspected international terrorism ties. And I have also been very vocal about the fact that since the last time I appeared before you, that we are increasingly concerned about the possibility not just of a foreign terrorist inspired attack, which is very much a concern, but even the potential for a coordinated foreign terrorist attack, perhaps
They're setting up the
against the
story.
concert hall in Russia, for example, but just here in the United States.
Well, the 19 suicide bombers who overstayed visas were responsible for 3,000 American deaths on 9/11. What's your best estimate of the number of foreign terrorists who are now in our country?
I don't know that I could give you that number. What I can tell you is we have lots of foreign terrorism related investigations, but that doesn't mean that all of them came in, illegally or anything like that.
It seems to me that the simplest act of terrorism would be for dozens of guerrillas to attack low security, high density venues, for example, Friday night high school football games all across the country at the same hour, with bombs and automatic weapons that would produce thousands of casualties from coast to coast in a matter of minutes. How likely is such a scenario?
Well, what you're describing would require, of course, a lot of coordination. But what I will tell you, and I think you're onto a particularly important point from my perspective, which is that unlike the 9/11 attacks, which, again, I was in FBI headquarters on the day of 9/11, and so I remember it vividly, and I've spent plenty of time in the period after that in my prior positions engaged with the families and the victims. But what we're seeing more and more with the foreign terrorist threat, and frankly, also the domestic terrorism threat.
Well, now we're talking about domestic, which is this is what it
I
was.
would call soft targets, which is really for the American people's benefit, just intelligence community speak for where everyday people live their everyday lives.
What terrorist groups have now infiltrated our country that you're tracking?
Well, I don't know that I would say infiltrated. We have investigations as we speak that relate to ISIS and its affiliates. We have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Qaeda. We have investigations as we speak that relate to Al-Shabaab. We have investigations as we speak that relate to the Iranian proxies, Hezbollah, and so frankly, even the IRGC Quds Force itself.
What foreign criminal gangs are now in our country that you're most concerned with?
Well, foreign criminal gangs, I mean, we obviously have investigations, a lot of investigations into, gangs like MS-13, for example, and some of its counterparts. Although I think if you were to talk to most chiefs and sheriffs like I'm doing every week, we shouldn't underestimate how prevalent neighborhood gangs are, really. It's a lot of the gang violence.
I'm concerned about those that we've allowed in through the southern border.
Exactly.
They are now posing.
But this still has nothing to do
vetting
with July
performed at the
13th.
southwest border is adequate to ensure that aliens with terrorist or criminal gang ties are not being released into the United States?
Well, it's not really for me to speak to the vetting. What I would tell you is that
you have to deal with it once they're released in the United States.
And one of the concerns that I have, which I touched on briefly in my opening, is there's been a lot of focus on the number of known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border, and that number has increased over the last 5 or 6 years, and that should be of concern. But frankly, to me, the bigger concern is individuals who weren't either weren't on the watch list at the time they came in because there wasn't information known yet that ties them to terrorism, and it's only after they get in that some new piece of information develops somewhere overseas, and now we know. That's a bigger concern.
We've been warned that they basically bet against a blank sheet of paper. If they don't have a record in this country, Border Patrol probably doesn't have any record. They're released into the country. You find out later of the dangers.
Or if they use fake documents and there aren't biometrics to connect them. Sometimes there are people who come in who, because of the nature of the threat information that puts somebody on the watch list, there wasn't fingerprints from the person at the time, because not every piece of intelligence comes with fingerprints. So then the guy comes in using fake ID,
and of course,
there's no reason to connect them.
And of course,
So why aren't they taking fingerprints of these people and putting them into a database?
Well, I don't know about absolutely nothing, because we may come across them in other things. I mean, one of the key parts of our collective defense here is that we work with 800,000 sworn law enforcement across the country, and we train them on the right questions to ask and things like that, so that we can build in additional eyes and ears if they
take
a
fingerprints.
traffic stop or whatever.
Seems like a
to be.
reasonable thing.
We run a greater chance of leveraging all that to pick up people who may have slipped through the cracks.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Director, we're about 100 days until the election. Russia has attacked our democracy in past elections. Are they seeking to do it in this one?
We assess that the Russian government continues to want to influence and in various ways interfere with our democracy, with our electoral process. In fact, just in the last few weeks, we announced a significant disruption of a generative AI enhanced social media bot farm, essentially, of the Russians that was designed to be an influence operation, and some of the fictitious profiles of those bots purported to be U.S. persons. So they're still at it. We've seen that in election cycle after election cycle.
Do the Russians have a preferred candidate?
I'm not sure that I can speak to that here, but certainly what I would tell you is it's not just the Russians. And I think that's important for people to know too. There's a lot of attention to the Russians, as there should be. But we also know, you may recall that in 2020, Director Ratcliffe and I announced an effort by the Iranians to try to interfere. And then more recently, we've had indictments related to China. 34 Chinese MPS officers creating fictitious personas, posting false information online, full of narratives designed to sow divisiveness, discord, undermine us. And I'm talking about narratives that they were pushing, again, purporting to be Americans, but actually Chinese MPS officers.
Why TikTok is horrible.
For example, trashing any suggestion that COVID came from a lab leak, or trashing U.S. law enforcement on the occasion of the anniversary of George Floyd's death.
And shifting to the attempted assassination on the former president, I want to make it clear, in America, violence has never been the answer. Not on a certain day in January or a recent day in July. And I just want to go through the shooting just briefly with you. How many armed officers were within the perimeter? Just ballpark figure.
You know, that really goes to the security posture, which is the subject of the DHS Inspector General's review and the outside panel, independent panel.
Would you say probably more than 100 though?
I have to believe that number, but I don't have that number at my fingertips. Our focus is on the shooter and his attack.
And the shooter was able to get 8 shots off before he was killed.
That's what it would appear, yes.
Type of weapon used by the shooter was an assault rifle?
Was an AR-style rifle.
So that means 1 trigger pull, 1 round. Is that right?
Essentially.
Do you like to shoot?
Do I? Yeah. Yes.
Do you know the difference between an AR and a bolt action rifle?
I'm not going to try to sit here and engage on sort of firearms expertise, but I've fired a variety of weapons. But
had the shooter used a bolt action rifle, would that have been one trigger pull, 1 round?
That's my understanding.
Would there have been more? Well, on an assault rifle, trigger pull round, bolt action non-assault rifle. What's the difference? Is it faster, slower?
He was able to get more rounds off more quickly than he would have with other kinds of weapons.
And that's my point, is that we can add additional resources to protect political candidates, and we should. The people who went to that rally deserved to be protected from gun violence, just like the students at Parkland deserve to be protected from gun violence, just like the babies at Sandy Hook deserve to be protected from gun violence. So we'll devote more resources. We've added a presidential candidate who is also now protected. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we have armed this country to the teeth. And we have allowed the most dangerous people to have access to the most dangerous weapons. I say that as a parent of a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, the 2 oldest who have done multiple mass shooter drills in their classrooms. I say that as a brother to 2 police officers who walk a very violent beat. And I say that as an elected official who believes that my colleagues deserve to be as safe as I deserve to be when we are at political rallies. So we really need to step back and think, if we allow these weapons to be in our country, can we truly protect our elected officials, and can we truly protect, most importantly, our children and the next generation? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. It is good to have Mr. Massey back with us today. Some of us had a chance to go to Kentucky over the last few weeks and visit with Thomas and his family and hear all kinds of wonderful stories about Rhonda. Amazing lady, gentle spirit, and we're glad to have Mr. Massey back with us. And the next 5 minutes belong to you, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Wray, how many counter snipers were present at the rally that day, and which of the counter snipers took the shot that took out the would-be assassin?
I don't have the number of counter snipers. I know it was the Secret Service counter sniper who took the shot that eliminated the shooter. We've conducted a number of interviews, including of him.
So was it one of the 2 that we see in the videos on top of the roof, or was it a different location that was chosen?
I'm afraid I don't have that at my fingertips here.
Okay. You mentioned that the would-be assassin bought a 5-foot ladder. You have a credit card evidence of that, but it looks like on the scene there was a larger ladder that he might have used. Do you know which ladder he used to get to the roof, and do you have possession of that 5-foot ladder and the other ladder, and do you know how the taller ladder got to the scene?
So this whole business about the ladder is something we're drilling into more. We do have possession of the 5-foot ladder that he purchased close in time to his attempted assassination. That we've traced the purchase of that ladder from a receipt, a bloodied receipt that he had on him at the time his body was recovered on the roof. We do not yet know for sure how exactly he got up on the roof. We're looking at, various forensic pieces to try to kind of piece that together. So more to come on that.
Do you know where the 5-foot ladder was found or retrieved? just near the roof, or was it still in his vehicle?
Neither. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it was not. I know that it was not on scene, and I know that it was not in his vehicle. But we can circle back to you. And
Okay. Is there any evidence at all that he may have been in contact with somebody else before this occurred that may have had any prior knowledge or may have helped him plan this event?
Well, needless to say, that is a question that we're intensely focused on, because that would obviously be incredibly meaningful. So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
And you're using geolocation data to see if his cell phone was near another cell phone, I presume?
Right, we're doing lots of different kinds of cellular analysis, geolocation stuff, looking at his accounts. He, from everything we've seen, which is consistent with what we've learned in interviews, a lot of people describe him as a loner. That does kind of fit with what we're seeing in his devices. His list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people. So it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of interaction between him, face to face or digital with a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean there's not any, and that's why we're drilling into. We're trying to talk to anybody who's had any engagement with him whatsoever, digital, in person, classmates, coworkers,
right,
etc.
Appreciate that. And now I want to talk about another possible assassination attempt. And I'll start by showing a video of President Biden. And this is from recently. This is in the last month. If we can play that.
Gallows erected to hang the Vice President Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America.
Okay, and he's referring to January 6th. Were there gallows erected to hang Mike Pence, as the president says here?
I'm not aware of any physical gallows. I can't remember whether, from a demonstration perspective, there may not have been some kind of replica or a symbol of something like that.
That's my impression. Can we show? Can you raise that up so you can see it? It looks like there was some kind of prop that was built. The construction doesn't look like it lends itself to actually hanging somebody. It's more of a prop, I think, as you suggested, that was erected on January 6th. But if the president were correct that these gallows were erected to hang Mike Pence, that would be a very serious allegation, wouldn't it?
I would take it very seriously, yes.
Has anybody been arrested, or do you have any leads in conjunction with the erection of this gallows? We had a picture here on the screen, if you can show it again. It was just up there. There's an individual here who's seen on near these gallows. Has he been arrested? Have you identified this person?
I don't know that I can speak to this specific person or the gallows that are pictured on the image. We have had, I think, 850 people who have pled guilty to federal crimes related to January 6th, and I think another 180, I think it is, convicted at trials. So I can't be sure.
And some of them merely for going into the Capitol, but here the president suggests that individual intended to hang Vice President Pence, which seems like kind of a wild claim myself, given the construction of those gallows. But if we are to take him seriously, or even if we aren't, let me just finish by saying this. If you have no leads, or you're not sure if anybody who erected those gallows was arrested or is being investigated, were there any confidential human sources involved from the FBI or any other agency in the erection of that prop, those gallows?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
All right. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Lady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Wray. Political violence of any kind is dangerous, unlawful, and totally unacceptable. Just as we all watched and then unequivocally condemned the attempted assassination attempt on our former president, I wish that we could all come together to unequivocally condemn the act of political violence on January 6th instead of defending props that were used, that were harmful, dangerous props of gallows, attempting to show what people wanted to do to Vice President Pence. Extremists attempted to subvert our democracy in the worst assault on the U.S. Capitol
Gracious, knock it off.
Many of us were trapped in the gallery that day.
Cut
We feared
it out.
we would not make it out. Insurrectionists were chasing down former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and then Vice President Mike Pence. And I myself have been the direct target of political violence when an armed man with a gun showed up at my door, threatened me and my family, and we actually ended up having to move our home. So I understand the increased tenor of political violence that is racking our country. It has been on the rise, fomented by violent and dehumanizing rhetoric from top public officials, including the former president and members of Congress, sadly, and bolstered by the proliferation of easily accessible guns, including assault.
We don't have a gun problem. We have a people problem.
And I wholeheartedly condemn it.
We have
I just
a
hope we
people
condemn
problem.
all of the violence, not just one or two incidents. Mr. Wray, today I want to focus on the role of the FBI and the need for the Bureau to remain politically neutral and independent. The FBI cannot and should not be subject to the whims of any president. The majority apparently doesn't think that the FBI needs to be politically neutral and independent. They want an FBI
We don't
subordinate
trust
to the
them,
president, not
lady.
accountable to the American people. That is one part of a larger plan to undermine our democracy, to remove the checks and balances that have protected us, and ultimately to subvert our freedoms. That agenda, promulgated by the former president, his loyalists, and their MAGA allies, is called Project 2025.
Ooh,
It is
this lady.
publicly available online.
We're the
I encourage
we're the
everyone who's watching
monsters.
this to
What
Google
rhetoric?
it. It
What
includes
freaking
plans
rhetoric?
to undermine every part of our government, including the FBI. Trump's Project 2025 agenda says that the director of the FBI must not be independent of politics, but instead must do whatever the president orders. Under Trump's Project 2025, Trump loyalists would undermine the non-political and independent structure of the FBI. Project 2025 openly calls on the next conservative administration to support, quote, a vast expansion of the number of political appointees in every office across the DOJ, especially the FBI. And so, Mr. Wray, given your extensive experience as a law enforcement professional at DOJ across multiple Republican and Democratic administrations, why do you think it's important that the FBI maintain political independence from the president?
I think the FBI is and needs to stay independent, and that means protecting American people without fear or favor, upholding the Constitution and the rule of law, and it means following the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it. And I add that last part because the essence of independence and objectivity is not that an investigation is going to always yield the result you want. Our independence and objectivity can't only be respected when you like the outcome. That's the very essence of objectivity. Sometimes you're going to like the result, sometimes you're not going to like the result. And that applies to everyone, including us. Any number of times we're disappointed and frustrated by the results of our investigations. But the alternative is an erosion of the rule of law, where the only thing that distinguishes one investigation from another is power. And that's what you see in some authoritarian countries around the world. So I'm not familiar with this particular
No, I didn't ask you to
Project
comment on that.
2025
No,
thing. I
just wanted
don't
to
know anything about it, but what I can tell you is, from my perspective, the FBI needs to be functioning as independent. Doesn't mean it's not part of the executive branch. It doesn't mean the FBI director doesn't serve at the pleasure of the president, but it does mean that the way we do our work
has to be
independent.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question about the role of attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel. How do we protect that work?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The role, what role do the attorneys at the FBI Office of General Counsel play in ensuring that the Bureau respects the constitutional rights of American citizens? How do we protect that work?
So, in my experience, the lawyers in the Office of General Counsel play an incredibly important role in ensuring that our agents have their questions about how to comply with the law in conducting their work answered.
and ensuring that we conduct our work in the right way, which means scrupulously adhering to the laws and the rules that apply to us.
I just wanted to say before I yield, Mr. Chairman, that the Project 2025 also eliminates the FBI's Office of General Counsel in-house lawyers who are responsible for that role. I appreciate your indulgence, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin's recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was when you were here December of last year, Mr. Wray, that you said blinking lights were going off in regards to the southern border and what is happening down there. Has the border situation improved in terms of your assessment with the security of Americans since you were last here in December?
Well, I guess a couple things, and I appreciate the question. So first, the blinking lights comment that I made refers more broadly to the threat environment that I'm seeing as FBI director across a wide range of threats. Contributing to that in a variety of ways are the threats that emanate from the border. So it's not a comment just on the border issues, it's the threat environment that we face more broadly, in my experience in law enforcement. I am increasingly concerned that foreign terrorists could seek to exploit vulnerabilities at our southwest border or at other ports of entry or in other aspects of our immigration system to facilitate an attack here in the United States. I think that is something we have to be concerned about. There's been a lot of focus on numbers of this, numbers of that, and I understand that. But as I think was referenced in an earlier question, it doesn't take very many foreign terrorists to be a real problem. We had 19 hijackers responsible for the 9/11 attacks. And we just not that long ago had a case, some of the members of the committee will remember, where we charged an individual for trying to smuggle individuals in to assassinate former President Bush.
Are you concerned that the Border Patrol chief, former Border Patrol chief Rodney Scott, said that he was concerned about very, very minuscule data that they were receiving? So there's all this, we are told that illegal aliens are vetted against databases, but oftentimes they're doing biometrics as they come into this country, but not looking behind it in their home countries. Does that concern you when there's not a review done in the home country?
Well, we certainly need as much help as we can get from the countries of origin of these people. When I say origin, not just where they come from originally, but countries they've come through. And the biometric enrollment piece is, of course, an important one. We have situations where even if...
Are we doing a thorough enough job of reviewing them, their actions, and their lives in their home countries?
We're not even doing a job here at home.
Well, I mean, we need more help from our foreign partners. There's no question about that. And I think that's an important part of it.
How about our domestic partners, like the CIA and others that are supposed to protect us?
So there's been a lot of discussion, of course, over the last several years about the pivot to what's called the hard targets, right? The understandable focus, which I support, of focusing on the threat posed by China and Russia and Iran. But with that comes, if you look at, for example, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we start to lose sources of information about foreign terrorist threats from overseas, and that is a concern to me.
Yeah, my time's running out. Has Vice President Harris met with you in regards to the border?
Well, I've been in meetings that have included the Vice President that have in different ways touched on border
Has she
issues.
specifically asked you for a meeting in regards to the threat that is at the border?
You know, I'm not going to get into sort of specific meetings, but I can tell you that I've been in meetings that have included, among other people, the Vice President that touch on border security issues.
Did she ask you questions about what you thought needed to be done in regards to reducing this threat to the American people?
You know, I really can't get into specific conversations.
Is support for President Trump a security concern within the FBI?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Is support for President Trump a security concern amongst your employees?
No.
Is objection to the COVID-19 vaccine a security threat?
Not from my perspective.
Who improved what is termed the Trump questionnaire within the FBI that was done by SIIS?
Well,
Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Ventry were behind it. was responsible for that? And did you know that there was a Trump questionnaire out there?
So the document you're asking about is an interview outline that we only recently learned about, and in my view is completely inappropriate. I asked my team to get to the bottom of what happened and to ensure that it doesn't happen again, and I've learned that it's not an FBI form, that its use was isolated, that it was created not by an FBI employee, but by an outside contractor, and that individual is no longer affiliated with the FBI. But we are sending what we have found to the Office of Inspector General, and we'll cooperate, of course, with anything they...
Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with this. We keep hearing about these isolated examples, whether it's Richmond Catholics, this instance. When is it? Isn't it a pattern?
Yeah.
Generally goes back, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Director Wray, welcome again to this committee, and I want to thank you and your
People
agents.
problem matter.
Good job you're doing to protect Americans.
Don't knock my cameras.
Earlier this week, I was part of the group that went out to visit Butler, Pennsylvania Homeland Security members. I agree with my colleagues that have said violence has no part in our democracy. And I trust you will investigate the events surrounding July 13th early. I'm going to ask you a question. I hope you keep it in mind as your investigation proceeds, which is, who's in charge? Who's in charge at a campaign rally, setting it up? Secret Service or a campaign? And I ask this question because when I was there, had a couple of law enforcement individuals alluding to that question as well. They gave me an example. He said, if a Secret Service says you need to set up a line of dump trucks behind the stage to serve, to protect the candidate, and the campaign says that's bad optics, who ends up winning the debate? So my question is, who's in charge? And as you investigate this crime scene, hope you ask the locally elected officials. I spoke to a county supervisor, local police and sheriff. They all had information they wanted us to know, to relay. We just didn't have the opportunity to sit down and talk to them. There was a lot of concern that they weren't given enough time to prepare for this rally. They thought there were things that could have been done better. And ultimately, what I keep thinking, what I keep coming back to is the question, who's in charge at these rallies? I think it's an important one because we have an election right around the corner. Pennsylvania, Butler, these areas, battleground states around the country will continue to be areas where our candidates, both sides, will show up. And the threats will continue to be there. So I hope, Director A, that you'll keep that statement in mind as you continue to investigate this crime scene.
Well, I appreciate the question. I will tell you that we've conducted well over 400 interviews, but we have many more still to conduct. And as is not unusual in an investigation, I'm sure there will be situations where we have to go back to people we've already interviewed with follow-up questions. And our interviews cover a wide range of people. I do think it's important to make sure that the committee and the American people understand the scope of our investigation versus the scope of others. Our investigation is focused on the shooter and his attack. There is, of course, and I understand completely why, there are two separate reviews, one by the DHS Inspector General and the other by this outside independent panel that's been announced, that are focused on the security posture, the adequacy of the security posture at the rally, Secret Service decision-making and actions and things like that. And so I certainly understand why there are all those questions, but those are in scope of those two other reviews, and of course, whatever Congress chooses to do. Our investigation, though, because of our interviews of people who are on the scene, will relate to that in some ways, and we're going to share whatever we learn that's relevant with those other reviews.
Director A, my last minute that I have, I'm going to flip quickly to your good job resources. Earlier this year in the Appropriations Committee, You testified that you were, for 2024, your budget was 500 million below what you needed to sustain
Wow.
the 2023 efforts. A few minutes ago, you talked about foreign terrorists. The last few weeks, I know information has emerged. That information came from FISA information that was able to be collected overseas on these possible terrorist threats. What we have here today is a domestic terrorist, what looks to be a lone wolf. Your statements, there's nothing really there that would have tipped anybody off to this individual. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I don't know that I'd go quite that far because we're still investigating a lot related to the shooter. It does appear so far that we're seeing less in his...
My 6 seconds, I would just say, I would ask that you let us know what resources you need to protect the American public and our candidates in our democratic system.
I appreciate the question. I would just say this. We are in, as I've said consistently today and for quite some time now, we are in an elevated threat environment covering a wide range of threats, and the FBI is central to protecting the American people from those threats. And state and local law enforcement, who depend on us every day, rely on us for all sorts of services, databases, forensic support, training. I could go on and on and on. And a lot of those departments, unlike the FBI, have had a hard time recruiting. And so this is not a time to pull back on our funding because we're going to leave our brothers and sisters in state and local law enforcement twisted in the wind. And then by extension, the American people we're all collectively sworn to protect.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas, recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here. When did you last speak with President Biden?
I don't have the exact date, but it's been certainly since the shooting.
So you have spoken to the president since the assassination attempt on President Trump's life?
Yes, sir.
And what was the mental state of the president?
We had a perfectly professional conversation.
That wasn't the question.
And do you have any scheduled briefings of the president upcoming?
Not at the moment specifically scheduled, no.
In 2016 and 2015, top FBI officials infamously texted about, quote, their insurance policy to make sure Trump was never elected or inaugurated as president. Have any FBI agents texted, emailed, or expressed disappointment that Trump survived the assassination attempt or otherwise editorialized about the assassination attempt?
I don't know about any agents. There have been at least 2 instances, I think, or 1 instance of an individual who posted something that I consider outrageous, totally inappropriate, and unacceptable. And that individual has been referred to our inspection division, which is the arm, our sort of internal affairs investigatory arm that does the disciplinary process.
Okay. Will you report back to this committee any other incidents?
I'll do my best to share information with the committee.
You testified earlier that the FBI maintains high standards irrespective of so-called diversity efforts. Is it true that in December of 2016, former Director Comey lowered the passing standards for Phase 1, allowing an influx of previously unqualified applicants to continue in the hiring process who normally would have been stopped back in December of 2016?
Yeah, I can't speak to Director Comey's
over the
changes. I can tell you that at least since I've been director, changes that we have made to...
we're standing on a specific question. Were standards changed? Phase 1, this specific part of the process, were they changed in 2016?
Well, I don't recall if they were changed in 2016. Obviously, I started, as your question presupposes, after that. What I can tell you is, since that time, we have made changes to various phases of the process, but none of them, this is important, none of them lowered the standards. In fact, if anything, they actually increased.
Are you familiar with reporting that we have, and we've asked questions to you about this, I'm not sure the result of the questions, that to more, quote, easily accommodate a large pool of available applicants, FBI special agent hiring standards have been relaxed and requirements measurably lowered. This according to a group of former agents who have testified about this and written a report and submitted it to Congress. In addition, specifically, minority, people with 20-year careers, one in particular, a minority served for more than 20 years, wrote in this report and submitted it to Congress saying that these standards were in fact lowered, and that in fact, if you were hiring, you were moved off of hiring if you put quality above these kinds of DEI requirements. Do you reject this report? And do you have comments on this report?
I haven't read. I'm aware of the report. I know that I've read every detail of it, but I can tell you that the claim that we have lowered our standards to be less selective and less competitive is not accurate.
So do you believe these former agents are lying to Congress when they submit a report to Congress stipulating and suggesting otherwise? Or are you saying that they are lying?
I'm saying they're mistaken.
Okay, but they're affirmatively on the record. They're telling us and submitting a report to Congress saying that those facts are directly contradicting what you're testifying here today. So I just want to be clear so we know. We're saying that they are submitting evidence to our record to the contrary that you say is untruthful.
I encounter all the time when I travel around the country and have conversations with our agents, and one of the things I try to do is have meetings with some of the longer serving agents without executive management.
That's my only question.
And my point here's
the implication is it's untruthful. So I need to move on. I got 1 minute left. Are you familiar with the case of Paulette Harlow? She's a 75-year-old elderly woman from Massachusetts with a debilitating medical condition. She was prosecuted for violating the FACE Act and sentenced to 2 years in prison. She has to go to Texas in 2 weeks. She was praying at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. The FBI interrogated and investigated her. Do you think it is appropriate for a 75-year-old woman who is praying at a clinic in D.C. to be put in prison for 2 years for that activity? Just a simple question. Do you think that's appropriate?
I'm not familiar with this specific case.
You're not familiar with that case. It's been significantly in the headlines, but you don't know how to comment on that case, that it's appropriate for a 75-year-old woman to be put in prison for 2 years for praying in a clinic.
Again, since I'm not familiar with the case, I don't want to start weighing in because I don't know all the facts. But what I can tell you is that when it comes to FACE Act enforcement and abortion-related violent extremism, I think one of the things that gets lost, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify it, is that really since the Dobbs decision, actually more of our abortion-related violent extremism investigations have focused on violence against pro-life facilities as opposed to the other way around. And we've had a number of investigations. We're using FACE Act resources and our JTTFs.
We're still waiting on responses on letters that we've sent indicating the data to the contrary. There's been significant amount of efforts in targeting of people who are pro-lifers who go to clinics, and that they've been prosecuted, like this case, a 75-year-old woman who is now going to jail in Texas for 2 years because she was praying at a clinic in Washington, D.C. And we've submitted questions on that, and I'd appreciate a response on it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here and for the work that your team does, as well as for sharing the information that you've been able to today. You just got a couple questions about that seem to imply that there was some problem with the FBI's diversity efforts, and certainly the 1950s version of the FBI was singularly Caucasian male agents, etc. Is the FBI a better force for having a diverse range of employees and agents?
I think diversity makes us better, but like everything else, it has to be done the right way. I think we can have a more diverse workforce and do it without lowering our standards, and that's, in my view, what we've done.
And you haven't lowered standards at the FBI?
We have not. I repeatedly come across people who are confused about different parts of that, and I appreciate the opportunity to set that straight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're all concerned here as we've seen the rollout of this Project 2025 that purports to try to eliminate any reference to diversity efforts across the entire federal government. So it is sort of a top of mind concern as it's threatening to become reality. So what I did want to talk about today is something some of my colleagues have mentioned, which is the normalization of threats and violence against public servants at all levels, whether it's election workers or school officials, elected officials and their families, judges, federal law enforcement agents, and others. To be clear, I think it's very clear that the majority of Americans wholeheartedly condemn any sort of political violence and understand that it's not legitimate discourse and that it has no place in our civic life. But words do matter, and they have consequences, particularly when uttered by people in positions of leadership. So that's why I remain very concerned by the willingness of some members of Congress to repeat disinformation and conspiracy theories that undermine trust in our public institutions, which serve all Americans. And when elected officials embrace overheated or fact-free rhetoric, it becomes dangerous. I have been heartened, as many national leaders have unequivocally condemned calls to violence, and I would urge all members of this body to do so and continue to do so, regardless of the party affiliation of the perpetrators or the targets of such threats. You and our other national security officials have repeatedly warned us that foreign actors are actively working to spread disinformation, to influence our elections.
I don't like this hearing. I think this hearing is such BS. It has nothing to do. It's more grandstanding than anything freaking else.
To live in a country
I'm just over it.
that we aspire to, where our most valued democratic processes like free and fair elections can
Every single one of these people on this side that doesn't want to focus on what happened need to be fired.
The right to vote without fear of violence. We've had some concerns about violence around our elections. In 2020, the endorsement and promulgation of falsehoods about the election results by the former president and his campaign led to threats and attacks against election officials and poll workers in Pennsylvania. And those falsehoods also wasted millions of taxpayer dollars on frivolous lawsuits and extraordinary security costs. So as we're again approaching November, we want to ensure that those who implement and defend our elections, our neighbors and our nonpartisan civil servants, can do that important work free from conspiracy theories and threats.
Oh, of course.
So we know our local law enforcement across Pennsylvania are preparing for some disruption and threats, because while Pennsylvania may be a battleground state in the upcoming election, that battle should obviously be a war of words over policy and the vision we're charting for our country's future, not an actual civil war. So how is the FBI working with state and local law enforcement to prevent and respond to election-related violence, particularly against election workers?
So in a variety of ways, we're partnering with state and local law enforcement. Obviously, the physical security in the first instance, in most of the respects you're talking about, is in the ordinary course, the responsibility of state and local law enforcement. But we play an important role in a number of ways. So we share, threat bulletins, information like that about things to be on the lookout for, things we're seeing. If we ever have specific threat information, then we work to get it to the right people. We have election crime coordinators, which we've had for decades in all 56 field offices.
I bet you do have election crime coordinators.
Not just state and local law enforcement, but election
I bet you were part of
officials,
2,000 Mules,
especially
too.
focus on security and threat-related issues. And then, of course, we're participating in the Election Threats Task Force that DOJ set up, which is focused on threats of violence or actual violence against election workers specifically. And we've had a number of arrests and even some convictions already on that.
Thank you for your input. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, Director. It's my intention to go approximately another half an hour. Then we'll break for the Prime Minister of Israel's address to the Congress on the floor, give you a chance for lunch, and then resume after that. But we'll keep pushing through for the next half hour if we can. Gentlelady from Indiana.
We'll push through for the next half hour too, and then we're going to kill the feed as well. And if you guys would like to watch the rest of it, you can watch the rest of it on your own.
And conversation, so I appreciate it. And answer some questions, so I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll answer also on 2 letters that I sent you over a year ago. One related to Durham report, and the other one related to Russian infiltrated SBU that collaborated with FBI. So hopefully we'll get these answers, and hopefully we'll start doing authorization. Don't you think doing authorization would help us to get better answers? Congress should be probably working authorizing your agency. Don't you agree with that?
We work very hard to try to get information to this committee and to other committees.
But authorizing spending probably would be a good thing for us to do. Don't you agree?
Oh, I'm sorry, authorizing what?
Our spending, not just doing appropriating, but actually doing authorization of spending through this committee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We might start doing that. But we can talk about, and a lot of my colleagues on the other side, AR-15 gets a lot of bad rap, like to bring it up, this issue. But really, there are a lot of hunting rifles that probably, maybe even more accurate than a lot of ARs. And don't you agree? We have like millions, right? Don't you agree? We have millions of rifles owned by law-abiding Americans. So do you think we should be taking them? Millions of rifles from law-abiding Americans? What do you think about that? Would that be something feasible and really we should be doing that?
Well, again, I'm not going to be addressing anybody's specific legislative proposal. From our perspective, from the FBI's perspective, the concern is any dangerous weapon in the wrong hands.
But all weapons
in the
are
hands
dangerous.
of the wrong person.
But all weapons are dangerous, right?
I'm sorry?
All weapons are dangerous. Knives are dangerous,
Sure.
explosive are dangerous. There are a lot of
Weapons
Cars are
by their
dangerous.
Are going to be confiscating, hunting rifles and rifles for millions of Americans. Do you think it's even feasible to do something like that from law-abiding citizens?
It's not something I'm advocating.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have to go back. That was a catastrophic failure of security. That what's happened, recently with attempted assassination. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I think former Director Cheatle has already publicly acknowledged that it was, I think her words were, a significant operational failure.
Then we have, similar situation, a different, talking about bad optics. Speaker Pelosi at the time didn't want to have bad optics on January 6th, and we didn't have proper security here on January 6th. That was a catastrophic failure too. Are we looking at that? Any one conclusion was made from that? Have we made any adjustments? Because I know a lot of people, got hurt now just being here. It was a lot of cases bringing up the Department of Justice, and a lot of them were really just law-abiding Americans that really just upset with the government, and they have a reason to do it. So I think we need to think about it before we prosecute, or instead of actually, looking how we can deal with real criminals and how we can have a proper security when we have events with so many people there. So did you have confidential human sources? I think you never answered that question on January 6th in the Capitol. Did you have some?
I'm sorry, what's the
Confidential human sources. Did you have them on January 6th in the Capitol?
Well, again, I'm never going to be getting into when and where
course
we
not.
have not used confidential human sources. But
Are you willing to stand the record that you had no confidential human sources that went into Capitol on January 6th?
as I've said consistently, I'm not going to get into where we have or have not used confidential human sources. I can tell you that if you are asking if the violence at the Capitol on
that's
January
not what she's
6th
asking.
is part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or agents, the answer is no.
No, I
And it's
didn't
a
ask you
disservice
that. I
to our
asked,
people.
so did you investigate any confidential human sources? Did you do any investigation and looking at that? So you're not answering if you had any or not. So if you had potentially, did you do anything you needed to make sure to investigate that none of your sources did anything wrong? If they did wrong, they were prosecuted the same way, like you're trying to prosecute a lot of people that really, even in Supreme Court rule recently that some unconstitutional charges.
Let me just add that there have now been, I think, 180 individuals who've gone to trial, in addition to the 850 who've pled guilty.
Right, but I think the problem is you put these
and let me-
charges, a lot of people would feel guilty. But let me say just quickly, because I only have 10 seconds, really. So I hope you will take seriously what you're doing. You know, related to the border security is also a crisis. You know, your vice president was leading on that. Has she initiated meetings with you to lead, like weekly or monthly meeting where she actually get briefings from you as a leading border czar that had that function? Have you had that? Has she initiated any meetings on a regular basis with you?
Again,
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman can respond.
Right. On this issue of confidential human sources, number one, I will say there is a DOJ OIG review that's underway that I think addresses some of these kinds of topics.
Sorry, she's
I
lying.
believe, but I won't speak for the Inspector General. Second, as to this suggestion, which I've heard all too many times, that somehow January 6th was orchestrated by FBI agents or sources, I will note that in addition to my prior comments, that there have now been 850-ish individuals who've pled guilty, another 180 who've gone to trial. They've all had access to defense counsel, discovery, all the things the Constitution and the rules provide them. It's been in front of something like 15 different judges, I think dozens of juries, and not one has given credence to this notion. And in fact, I don't think any of them have even really seriously tried to raise it. So it's not just my word for it. Look what's happening in the cases. Thank you.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here, for your testimony today, for the work that you do each and every day, and that your frontline agents across the country do each and every day to protect Americans, to keep our country safe. Also grateful for the work that you're doing in investigating the horrific events of July 13th and the attempted assassination of former President Trump, which everyone must and has condemned. I would first just ask, do you believe that the FBI has the adequate resources to ultimately ensure that your agency gets to the bottom of it and fully investigates this terrible crime?
Well, we are devoting massive amounts of resources to this specific investigation. We have easily several hundred FBI agents, analysts, and professional staff working on it. It involves over half of the FBI's 56 field offices, almost every headquarters division. We even have some of our overseas offices working on it. You might say, well, why is that? Well, because some of the companies that involve accounts or purchases or communications or what have you that the shooter used are foreign companies, so we have to get evidence from overseas from those companies. I've talked about our lab a little bit earlier today. We've got our Office of Technology Division working on the digital devices. We have our Behavioral Analysis Unit, our BAU, working on helping us build out a profile of the shooter. I could go on and on and on. So it's all hands on deck on this case, as I think is appropriate. Now, when you ask about our resources, I've been public about the fact that the fiscal year 24 budget put us $500 million below where we needed to be to sustain current operations. And on FY25, the current House mark would put us significantly further back behind that and would result in significant risks across every program and our support to state and local law enforcement. We arrested something like 50 violent criminals per day, every day last year. The current mark would mean more violent criminals on the street, more neighborhoods at risk. We have about a 1,300% increase in our investigations related to China and its targeting of us. And I can assure you, China's not cutting its budget. This would mean more threats from China.
Close the border.
We have something like 300 to 400 investigations just into cartel leadership.
Close the border.
And about hardly a week goes by when some FBI field office isn't seizing enough fentanyl to wipe out an entire state.
Close the stinking border.
That mark, those cuts means more fentanyl on the street, more people dying. So the people who suffer the most are state and local law
Biden's
enforcement
keeping their administration needing more and more money because they refuse to close a freaking border.
We really need to be smart about what we're doing, and I think that would be a step in the wrong direction given the threat environment that we face.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Director Wray. And of course, we've talked about this during previous hearings in which you've testified. And to be clear, that I think the budget that House Republicans have proposed, which is about a $325 million cut to the FBI, would do precisely what you've described and have deleterious impacts.
Thank you, Michelle.
Across our country
and everybody else that's contributed to this show today. Thank you very much.
We've talked at great length about the events of July 13th.
I haven't seen all of them yet.
There's justifiably a lot of public interest in the investigation, which we understand is
that you guys never discussed this entire freaking proceeding.
That you'd like to disclose or provide to the committee or to the public that perhaps has not yet been gleaned during the course of this hearing, and just give you an opportunity, because there's a lot of folks related to the investigation.
Yeah, because you guys didn't talk about it.
An update on, which is pretty fresh here. We had some conversations with some of the members about the access to the roof and the ladder and so forth. And our evidence response teams and their forensic collection, we've now believed that the subject climbed onto the roof using some mechanical equipment on the ground and vertical piping on the side of the AGR building. In other words, we do not believe he used a ladder to get up there.
Oh, wow.
One question, if the chairman might indulge.
Yeah, not trained at all.
A few extra seconds. There's an article recently regarding several former Trump administration national security officials who had received a duty to warn briefing from the FBI regarding the potential threat from Iran. And I think there is this article made clear deep concern that these individuals have, justifiably so, about the threat level, particularly given the events of the last several months, and the need for there to be an increased security posture and security personnel for former officials who may very well still be at risk. And I don't know if you're familiar with that article. I'm trying not to use names here, but I think would perhaps follow up with your agency and with the Department of Justice more broadly to ensure that any individuals who are potentially facing a threat from Iran or another hostile actor in a foreign nation have the resources they need to have the security available to them.
So again, without reference to any specific individual, I want to be very clear about this because I've tried to be vocal on this, but it sometimes doesn't get noticed as much, which is that in my view, the Iranian government has been extremely aggressive and brazen. We have seen in the last few years an attempt, I'm speaking just from public information now, an attempt to assassinate a former U.S. National Security Advisor on U.S. soil. We have seen an attempt first to kidnap and then to try to murder an American dissident / journalist who was a critic of the Iranian regime right smack in the middle of New York City. We have seen a cyber attack against a children's hospital in New England that ties back to Iran. We have seen
New England is not
as
the
I
United
testified
States of
before,
America.
as
Your
for a
Federal
directive,
Bureau
I
of
announced an effort
Investigations,
by the
not
Iranians to
Worldwide
target
Bureau of
the
Investigations.
2020 presidential election. And that's all before you even get to the fact that the Iranian government is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. So if that's not enough to convince people that Iran is a threat, I don't know what is.
But Director, was there a distinction between what the gentleman from Colorado raised and what you just said, this general concern in these specific incidents you talk about, and a direct specific threat on President Trump that's distinct from what you've been describing as this general concern with Iran?
Well, again, I can't get into specific pieces of class.
And if so, when? If it was a distinct threat on President Trump, when did that take place?
Yeah, all I can tell you, certainly in this kind of setting, is targeting of U.S. officials for the Soleimani strike is something that is a reality that the Iranian government has at times.
So you just heard about it and decided to tag everybody as being a person of
whenever there is
interest in their
reporting, let me
target.
try to answer your question this way. Whenever there is reporting about any of those protectees,
Steele dossier, Hunter's
we
laptop.
share the information
Just want to
in a
remind
variety
everybody
of
in
ways,
chat.
working with the intelligence community, working with whoever is the protective service with responsibility for that individual, and we do it in a timely way using the duty to warn process that was just referred to. And to my knowledge, everything along those lines that's relevant was shared in a timely way with the relevant people.
Thank you. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Director Wray, thanks for being here. Where were you when you heard that President Trump was shot, and then what were like your immediate actions, response to that as director?
I was about to have dinner with family, and I was horrified and angry.
I'm just thinking, the reason I asked the question is because I'm still trying to figure out kind of the lanes, what the FBI would respond to and what the Secret Service has the responsibility to respond to. Can you just kind of cover that again?
Sure. So the FBI is not responsible for, has never really been part of our mandate or mission for the physical security of venues, of specific protectees or anything like that. That's if it's somebody within Secret Service's scope, that's their mandate and mission. We are a law enforcement and intelligence agency, and so when you think about it this way, we're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're not the Federal Bureau of Security.
And you did not have this information, sir.
We investigate crimes. We investigate threats to national security.
That was a national security threat, and you failed, sir.
The adequacy of resources and assets that were deployed to protect a specific individual, whether there's enough security, and certainly the staffing of that security is not something the FBI, again, we're 116 years old, has historically done.
Yeah, but your intelligence was flawed.
Have you been able to go through the shooter's home and kind of document kind of what what you found as far as evidence goes?
So we have been able to search the shooter's home. So again, just sort of tying your first question to your second question now, our role is to conduct an investigation of the shooter and the attack. And so we're going to conduct a painstaking, intense investigation of that.
Okay.
We have, among other scenes that we've processed using evidence response teams, in addition to the rally scene itself, of course, we have been through the shooter's home, his bedroom, the other parts of the house, etc.
Have you been able to establish that he did go to a range and either zero that weapon in or, at least target shoot that weapon prior to the assassination attempt?
So we do assess that he went to a shooting range the day before. Not the only time he went to a shooting range. He was a fairly avid, might be a little strong, but a fairly avid, shooting hobbyist. And so he went to, belonged to different sort of clubs and went to certain ranges and that kind of thing. We do believe, based on what we've seen so far, that he went to a shooting range the day before and that he shot an AR-style rifle at that range the day before. I'm not sure we know for sure that it's the weapon that he used, but I think we assess that it probably is.
Have you been able to interview his parents?
Yes, we have.
And was there anything that was gained from that interview that would lead you to believe that they certainly were aware of what was going on?
I guess I want to be careful about talking about specific people's interviews, but I would say that his parents were cooperative with us. And as I've said before, and hopefully this gets at your question, we have not identified any accomplices, co-conspirators, or anything along those lines.
That's our federal government.
So it's the FBI's position right now that he still acted independently.
Again, we're still, I know it seems like a lifetime since July 13th, but we're still early stages, but we have not seen anything so far that would suggest to us that he acted with others.
How does the FBI view not just a Trump rally, but political rallies versus other types of events, from a security perspective, compared to a college football game or any mass, large crowd type gathering? Because I think that one of the things that's most difficult to really to swallow at this point is that the idea that these Trump rallies have been happening for years, and that there could be such a lax approach to the physical security of those fairgrounds that day. And I'm wondering, where does this fall? And then on top of that there were other presidential candidates out there that didn't have full Secret Service protection. RFK Jr. has been the most vocal about it. I was wondering if you could comment on the facilities as well as providing security for presidential candidates.
Well, again, I want to be a little bit careful to stay in my lane because, again, security posture and the adequacy of the security posture is really the core expertise and responsibility of agencies like the Secret Service. But certainly it is, I think, fair to say that outdoor events, whether they're political rallies or, as you say, a college football game in an open stadium, a concert, these are places that are often, particularly challenging to secure adequately because the range of threats that can face them are higher. In addition to that, as has been discussed a little bit here already in today's hearing, just threats to public officials, including politicians, is an increasingly pervasive part of today's landscape, and so that adds to the challenge. So you're talking about the combination of individuals who are increasingly targeted for violence, combined with venues that are softer and harder to secure targets, I guess is the way I would answer. But again, those kinds of questions, the adequacy of the security posture, all the resources that were or were not devoted, all that stuff, is my understanding would be very much in scope for the DHS Inspector General investigation and this outside independent panel that's been.
I yield back. Gentleman yields back. Director, I think we're going to be able to get two more members' time to question, then we have to get to the floor for the Prime Minister. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you so much, Director Wray, for your transparency and your testimony today. First, I want to say my friend, my mentor, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, was known by many as the voice of reason here in Congress. And she was my friend before I even came to Congress. And in my freshman year, she kind of took me under her wing and she kind of showed me the ropes. And she was a force to be reckoned with. And I can say that she will never, ever be replaced. And she was a trailblazer, and I know that she will sorely be missed here in Congress. Director Wray, I only have one question for you today, but before we get to that point, I'd just like to reiterate today that political violence is
Okay, I'm sorry of the frickin' strategic message and grandstanding.
Political values.
This is not what we pay you for.
Assassinations are staying to the
We got a people problem, not a gun problem. People problem, not gun problem.
We have endured riots on Capitol Hill on January 6th, where a literal
how do they happen? Why won't the FBI explain that?
Intended for
and all their
Vice President
intelligence.
Pence and Speaker Emeritus Nancy
It's a joke.
Pelosi. Political violence against election workers, that has been expressed today.
Well, quit
The
stealing
attack on
elections.
Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband. Threats against the FBI agents, as you have expressed, and prosecutors.
Nancy
and
Pelosi's
threats
own
to
son
the
attacked her
staff
husband with a hammer.
who serve the
No,
public
maybe
every
that was
single day.
Actually, I think that was a intruder. I thought it was our
Congressman
son.
Connolly's staff was targeted and attacked last year. And now we have the attempted assassination of a former president of the United States. All of this within just the last 3 years. This violence simply needs to end. Assassination attempt on Donald Trump was,
Like you
by
care.
the grace of God, a failure.
Like you care, lady.
The weapon the 20-year-old man was able to obtain, an AR-15, generally has a shooting range up to 600 yards. And
So
shot
why
Mr.
was
Trump
that
from
arena
almost
not?
150 yards.
They're asking the wrong questions.
This weapon has the
They're
ability to
grandstanding.
kill multiple people
They're doing
in
damage
seconds.
control.
And sadly, Corey Competour lost his life because of this
Excuse me.
and because of this gun. Mr. Competour's family will never be the same. Trust me, I understand that more than anyone else in this room. Is the near loss of a former president enough for this Congress to finally take action? Because there are 206 of us that are already standing in the wings, ready to take immediate action to ban assault weapons.
Oh,
today.
Jesus. Here we
need
go.
only 12 more of our colleagues to join us in courage and move the
We have a
legislation
people problem, not a
to
gun
save the
problem.
lives of
We're going to
so
remove
many
cars?
of the people
This is one
that
step
we
to
are elected
communism.
serve
You guys see
by
your own party.
removing assault
They
weapons
stole
from
your
the hands of
election.
people
Now
who
they want to
simply
steal your guns.
should not have
What's
them in
next?
their
Your
possession.
homes? They already let
We are
people steal your
crippling our
jobs.
democracy, and we are ripping apart our fellow Americans until we do. I
Quit
ask
stealing our
today,
money.
because it is clearly it wasn't
Sorry,
enough to
guys.
take action when the lethality of assault weapons. We lost 26 and 7-year-olds and 6 teachers in 2012. When I also
What
lost
communities
my
were they in,
son
lady?
to gun violence.
In
14
communities that had
teenagers,
0 guns.
3 more teachers in
How's that possible?
2018. Nor was it enough when we lost 19 more children and 2 more teachers in 2022. Well, is it enough now? Now that a former president, the very president of many of you in this room, are hoping
And
will
he,
be
even after he
reelected,
gets shot,
almost lost his life
protects our rights
because
to
this
carry.
Congress has failed to reinstate an assault weapons ban. A ban that, by the way, Republicans joined with Democrats the past 30 years ago. Well, fine. Y'all don't like assault weapons ban? We can bring another bill that I have introduced to a vote, the Go Safe Act. This bill focuses on the components of the semi-automatic firearms and regulates their infrastructure, sale, and transfer. This is for thoughts and prayers. This is a time for action. Director Wray, just one question I have for you. Would you rather have your officers
Sorry, I didn't mean for her
protected,
to freak out.
protect someone against an assault weapon being shot from 147 yards away,
or standard pistol with no accessories attached.
Well, again, I'm going to refrain from appearing to comment on specific legislative proposals, but I can tell you that we are certainly concerned about the danger to law enforcement from any kind of high-powered weapon in the wrong hands. And it hits close to home for us because just not that long ago, two great agents, Laura Schwarzenberger and Dan Elfin, down in Miami, executing a search in a crimes against children case, were shot and killed by a subject with an automatic weapon. So again, dangerous weapons in the wrong hands is something that, of course, from a law enforcement perspective concerns us, but I'm not going to wade into the legislative process.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'd rather give our agents a fighting chance. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Wray, for being here today. So we spend $3 billion a year, excuse me, on the Secret Service, $3 billion. And it would seem that we could and should have had a better job done a few weeks ago on the 13th than what we saw. Will you have anything to say about correcting what are the obvious deficiencies in what the Secret Service did?
Well, for the most part, the deficiencies or adequacy or inadequacy of Secret Service's performance, decision-making, resources, all that stuff is in the purview of those two other investigations. That is the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been announced. Having said that, our investigation, which, as I've testified now, involves several hundred FBI employees and every asset we can bring to bear of the shooter. Again, our investigations of the shooter and his attack, of course, involves interviewing law enforcement, including lots and lots and lots of Secret Service people. So we'll share all that with those reviews so that they can answer.
Secret Service wouldn't talk
The reason I'm asking
because of
this
their
is because
investigation.
This isn't the first time the Secret Service has been before Congress. There was a 435-page report issued in 2015 by Congress saying, fix yourself. They didn't. In fact, there was a follow-up in 2019 where they had only done a few of the, I think it was 18 or 19 different specific things they were supposed to do. They'd done some, but certainly not all. There was another follow-up in 2022. And again, the Secret Service had not done what Congress had asked. I guess my question to you, Mr. Director, is what should Congress do? A 435-page report 9 years ago, and still the Secret Service didn't do what it was told to do then. Can you help, Director Wray? Because this type of performance is not acceptable.
Well, I think even former Director Cheatle has acknowledged that this was a significant operational failure. If there are ways for the FBI to be helpful beyond what we're already doing in terms of our investigation, we stand ready to try to be helpful. I do want to say, as somebody who's been in law enforcement for most of my career, I've worked with some just phenomenal Secret Service agents. I'm going all the way back to my time as a line prosecutor, and they have an incredibly hard job.
Make sure you give them a pat on the back, dude.
I have a lot of affection and respect
for their failures.
The Secret Service.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you're right. But the trouble is, when Congress says you need to do these 19 things and they don't, something needs to change. Now, the director has resigned, but you're going to be in a position, because your agency is doing such a careful review, to say a lot about what should have been done. I guess the real issue is much more of what the higher-ups in that agency are or are not doing, and perhaps that's on us.
And we will share with those reviews anything that we come across that could be helpful or relevant to them for those questions.
Let me quickly go to some details on the actual events. It appeared to a lot of us, as the Secret Service was taking former President Trump from the stage, that he was clearly still in view of everybody. And had there been another shooter, I didn't see him being protected. Are you going to raise that issue?
I think that's really more in scope of these two other reviews.
Let me go both of them. Okay, that's fine. Let me go to the shooter as he was on top of the roof. Apparently another officer from another police division saw him and quickly ducked down because the shooter aimed a gun at him. And then the shooter apparently, was he prone at the time he took the shot toward the president?
So my understanding is that the local officer
prone means on his belly
that we're talking about with the assistance of another local officer, was able to kind of get up and see onto the roof where he observed the shooter, I believe, in a prone shooting position. The shooter then turned and faced him, the local officer, with the weapon.
From the prone position.
That's my understanding.
And then he went back to the prone position.
And then this is all seconds before the shooter took his...
But that entire time, the shooter was in the scope sight of the counter sniper, correct?
That one I'd have to double check on. I know we've interviewed the counter sniper, but I'm not sure I know the answer.
The counter sniper didn't take a shot until after the assassin attempted to shoot.
Unleash 8 bullets.
You got off 8 shots before the counter sniper shot the shooter. What's with that protocol? Can you get that fixed?
Well, I really want to be careful not to be, given the scope of our investigation, somehow second guessing the very difficult act and decision it takes for a counter sniper to kill another human being in that situation. It's all happening in seconds. So
8 shots.
Yeah.
And that was after he'd been seen for 20 minutes. I yield back. Thank you.
Director, that's an important question though, because you've talked to the counter sniper, and that, I mentioned this in our opening statement, that critical 5 minutes from 6:09 to 6:14, and what takes place there is critical, and I think that's what the gentleman was getting at, and we were hopeful that you could tell us something about your interview with the counter sniper.
Yeah, I guess I want to distinguish a couple things. There is some individual, not law enforcement, I believe, who spotted the shooter on the roof a few minutes before. But I think law enforcement spotting him with the weapon on the roof is seconds before the shot. So
that's important.
Yeah. So there's two different things.
I think what you're saying is it wasn't maybe that's if the bad guy shoots at 6:11, then you're saying this encounter with local law enforcement that Mr. Benz was just getting into happened just seconds before that, and maybe not 2 minutes before that.
That's my understanding. That, in other words, that there's different things here. There's an individual, at least one individual I can think of.
I would expect him to know that.
A member of the public who observed him on the roof. Not clear whether or not the individual saw a weapon or not, but saw him in a way that was concerning. That is some number of, not many, but like just a handful of minutes. I think separate from that, as far as law enforcement goes, in terms of a weapon, this local officer that we just talked about observed the individual, again, literally just seconds before the shooter took his shots. Separate and apart from all of that, roughly, I think, maybe a little less than or around an hour before the shooting, there were local law enforcement officers who observed the shooter, not up on the roof, not with a weapon, but with I believe, a rangefinder, kind of like you would use if you were playing golf or something, in a way that was odd and suspicious. So that started happening with local law enforcement beforehand. But in terms of shooter, meaning with the weapon, law enforcement, my understanding is that the first time that happened was this local officer climbing up on the roof seconds before.
Again, we want that timeline. I think the committee wants that timeline and communications that were taking place in that short period of time.
Again, as I've said with everything else, I really want to be careful. I'm leaning in, trying to share as much as I can here. Facts are evolving, things may change, but we are working on a timeline, among other things.
Committee will stand in recess until after the Prime Minister's remarks conclude.
All right. We're going to be ending our show. Hold on. Thank you all. Thank you all that decided to be here. We're going to be ending our show as well. I just got Chinese delivered. I need to make my neighbor a plate and take over some food to him. But as you see, there's a lot of grandstanding. Lots of grandstanding when it came to the politicians today. It was not well taken by me. I'm sure it wasn't well taken by a lot of Americans across this country. We've started seeing a unity. But you can't see a unity in some of these people. Some of these people are out to seek and destroy no matter how you look at things. I'm sorry. But we were here to find out information about what happened July 13th. And we were taught about gun control and how the disdain of the left wants gun control. Again, we do not have a gun problem in this country, just like we don't have an automobile problem in this country, just like we don't have a knife problem in this country. We have a people problem in this country. But instead of asking about Donald J. Trump and how the stuff that happened, we got more gun control. Forced down our throats yet again. Nobody, hardly anybody, asked any specific questions related to that day. This was a total mess, in my opinion, by that Judiciary Committee or the Oversight Committee or whatever it is. This was a colossal failure on their part because they had an opportunity to come together and find out what truly happened, and instead they stonewalled and they grandstanded. That's my opinion about the situation. God bless each and every one of you. We need to pray for our country. And these people that were on this committee that chose to take their time to grandstand on gun control, you, the public, need to make sure that they can never sit in that office or on that chair ever again. This is a huge milestone in our country where a president of our lifetime and our history came this close to death outside of Reagan, which I was just a kid for. This is dangerous. These are dangerous times, and the rhetoric I just heard from that committee is appalling to me when we already have so much because they know what they did. And now they got to try to embellish what truly happened and try to put there and try to damage control over January 6th. It was disgusting. And then we have Chris Wray not telling us how many agents he had in that crowd, because many of us believe it was the FBI that kicked off that. Remember, there was a computer missing. We were lied to about another computer, weren't we? We were lied about Hunter's computer. And you know who lied to us about that? The FBI. We were lied to about the Steele dossier. You know who lied to us about that Steele dossier? The FBI. You see a theme here? Do you see a theme? I don't trust any of them. I want an independent investigation of people that Donald Trump trusts. That's what I demand. That's what I want. I think at least 85 million of this country plus would like to see that. What we just seen today, in all fairness, sorry to all of my religious people that don't like to hear cuss words, that was horse shit. God bless.